After Harry informed some of his own entertainment company's artists, he made an appointment with everyone. What he needed to do now was to go to the Mountain City High School to meet up with the event planners. Michaela was completely unaware of this and continued to attend classes as usual. Harry, on the other hand, quietly went to see the principal of the school when he was giving her lunch as usual. In the beginning, when the principal of the Mountain City High School found out that Harry also wanted to sponsor the school's celebration activity, he was doubtful that a young man like Harry could afford it. He didn't understand why Harry would do this, because the school's anniversary in the past was sponsored by former graduates. Harry wasn't an alumnus, and they had never met him before. For him to suddenly propose a sponsorship was very puzzling. Mr. Parker, right? I don't know why you want to sponsor the school anniversary event. Do you have any conditions? Do you want to advertise something else? The principal asked. Harry shook his head. Principal, don't you accept sponsorship from outsiders? The principal said, it's odd for someone to come out of nowhere and try and sponsor an event without an ulterior motive. In the past, it's been sponsored by former students, so if you want to advertise, there is no need to mention this matter. Our school does not accept sponsorships with conditions, and there will not be any marketing. He thought that Harry wanted to promote something from his business. The principal knew the influence of the event, and it had always attracted greedy businessmen. Unfortunately, the principal thought wrong. Harry wanted to pay for it unconditionally. Not only would he pay for it, but he also wanted to bring in some A-list celebrities to perform. Harry took a sip of tea that he got from the principal's secretary and said with a smile, it's not like that. I'm giving money unconditionally. I don't need to advertise, nor do I need the school to do anything for me. This is purely a sponsorship, not business. The principal heaved a sigh of relief. When he heard that Harry wanted to sponsor the school with $10 million, he was so scared that he almost couldn't hold his teacup. Now that Harry had said that he didn't have any requirements and conditions, it couldn't be any better. After all, this was $10 million. No one could refuse such a large sum of money to be given to them for free. But the principal was still puzzled and asked, Mr. Parker, are you serious? You're not joking with me, right? Harry smiled and said, of course not. I have prepared the money. If you agree, I can transfer the money now. The principal was so excited that his hands started to tremble. However, it was a huge sum of $10 million. He didn't dare to accept it without saying anything. He still asked very cautiously, then I really have to thank you. But can I ask why you want to give this sponsorship? Harry said casually, this is very simple. My sister attends this school, and she's going to take the college entrance exam soon. Ah, so that's how it is. I really didn't expect that Mr. Parker's sister would actually be in our school. We're honored to have her, the principal said happily and surprisingly. After thinking for a while, he asked, I don't know if I've heard that last name. Which class is she in? Grade 12, class 2. Her name is Michaela. She doesn't share my last name, Harry replied. The principal was puzzled again. The principal didn't ask more about it. He felt it was better to not ask. The principal said, Michaela, she's always performed very well in school. The principal kept going on praising Michaela and all of her achievements. Harry thought, how could he know who Michaela was? Harry figured he was trying to make him feel better since he was spending $10 million. Harry said modestly, you don't have to be so polite, principal. It is my goal to leave a perfect memory for my sister before she graduates. Money is no issue. The principal said, then Mr. Parker, I'll gladly accept this money. Okay, I'll arrange the transfer right now. Harry nodded and gestured to June, who was standing beside him. June then went to complete the transfer with the principal's secretary. In just a few minutes, the transfer was successful and the $10 million was transferred to the school's account. The principal's secretary walked over and said excitedly, Principal, we have received the payment. Is that so? Hurry up and get more tea for Mr. Parker. The principal was excited. This was the largest personal sponsorship they had received since the school was founded. Mr. Parker, I really don't know how to thank you. How about I contact the media for you? The principal was overjoyed. However, considering that Harry had given up so much money for nothing, it would be unreasonable not to give him some benefits. He wanted to use the media to publicize his good deeds so that Harry could be praised by the public. Unfortunately, Harry didn't want this. He shook his head and said, that's not necessary. I don't need that kind of attention. Hearing that Harry really didn't care, the principal gave up on this idea. Harry said again, but there is indeed one thing that I have not said. The principal's heart skipped a beat. He thought that there was indeed a condition. The principal asked anxiously, what else do you want? It's like this. I heard that there's a tradition at the school anniversary ceremony. Celebrities will be invited to help and encourage the students who are about to take the college entrance examination, Harry said slowly. Yes, that's true. It's been going on for many years. Although the school doesn't encourage students to chase after celebrities, the response to inviting celebrities is not bad. So they kept it, the principal said. Harry smiled. That's good. I wanted to hire a couple to come to the event. The principal heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. He had thought that Harry would have some excessive requests. He didn't expect that it would be this simple. He said with great joy, "Of course, invite whoever you want." Harry nodded in satisfaction. That's good. I'll contact you about the logistics. I'll send someone to take care of this matter. Mr. Parker, you don't need to worry too much. But let me ask you one more question. Who are you going to invite? How many people are there? Harry said faintly. Not many, just... When the principal heard the string of names Harry said, he was stunned. He couldn't be blamed for being ecstatic. In the past, the school had some big names attend the event, but never this many. However, the celebrities that their school could invite were very ordinary. Most of them were B-list or C-list celebrities. Being able to have a third-rate celebrity was already considered pretty good. Usually, the graduation event would be good for the smaller celebrities because it would give them a platform to promote themselves. Furthermore, in the past years, it was not only the students who participated. There were also the parents of the students and some of the local celebrities. To be able to catch the eye of a famous celebrity in this performance was also the hidden goal of these small celebrities. Harry's entertainment company also had to deal with this kind of game that the entertainment industry played, although in general, Harry had been able to avoid it. Harry would be bringing some top-tier celebrities. Mountain City High School could only ever get small celebrities with a small group of fans. The school was happy to have them because it made other people interested in the school, which could lead to sponsorships. When the principal heard that Celeste, Issa Ivy, and the top female group in the country, the Dream Angel group, would be coming, he accepted the offer on the spot. The principal thought he struck gold. He had been a fan of all of them since they debuted. The principal was in disbelief. Mr. Parker, you're not lying to me, are you? The principal asked impatiently. Harry shook his head. Of course I'm telling the truth. I'm not in the mood to joke. The principal was extremely excited. These are all A-list celebrities. Can they really lower themselves to perform in our little high school? Harry smiled. Of course, I forgot to tell you, I own the entertainment company that contracts them. Really? I never would have guessed, the principal said in surprise. He looked at Harry again and felt that he was not a normal man. He could throw millions at such a young age without even blinking, just to make his sister happy. And to have so many top celebrities working for him. The principal knew that Harry had to be paying them a lot of money to keep them working for his company. Seeing that Harry was so wealthy at such a young age, the principal thought he'd have heard of Harry, but he couldn't think of hearing any news about him. Therefore, the principal felt that Harry was very mysterious. After respectfully sending Harry away, the principal, who had returned to his seat, felt even more confused. Harry was a rich and powerful young man. His sister should have been living a luxurious life, which made the principal think, why would she be at such a poor school if she had all this money? This point had puzzled the principal. Although Mountain City High School was indeed a famous school, it couldn't be considered a good school. Furthermore, most rich families sent their kids to private school. It was not that the principal looked down on his own school, but the problem was that he knew in his heart that his school didn't get enough funding to be a good school. No rich family would ever send their kids to his school. Thus, the principal couldn't figure it out no matter what. He simply called his secretary over. He instructed, Mr. Parker just said that his sister is Michaela from class 2, right? Yes, principal. Do you need to pay more attention to her? The principal said helplessly, No, just let me see her file. The secretary was speechless. Seeing that the secretary had gone out to search for files, the principal helplessly scratched the few strands of hair that were left on his head. He was regretting his previous behavior. If he had known earlier that Michaela was rich, he wouldn't have ignored her for the past few years. He definitely had to pay more attention to her and make sure she has the best experience at school. To put it in a very realistic way, he had to think of ways to please Michaela. If he could get on her good side, he would be able to enjoy an endless amount of wealth in the future. People with money and power would be respected wherever they went, and the principal wanted that kind of life for himself. Now that they knew Michaela was rich, He felt that it was too late. She was about to participate in the college entrance exam. After the exam, she would bid farewell to her high school life and go off to some university that would shower her with attention and care. The principal regretted not taking advantage of the situation sooner. When the secretary found the file, the principal was even more dumbfounded when he opened it. It's her? How could it be her? Looking at the photo on the file, the principal said in disbelief. He asked the secretary, "Are you sure you didn't grab the wrong one?" The secretary said, "It can't be wrong. Class 2, Michaela. She's the one Mr. Parker was talking about." "That's impossible. I remember that she's just some poor girl." The principal was puzzled. He only remembered after seeing Michaela's photo that he remembered that Michaela was also quite popular in school. When Harry said his sister's name was Michaela, the principal didn't think too much about it. He was just surprised that there was such a distinguished student in his school. But now, when he saw Michaela's file, he was confused. Michaela was famous in the school. Other than the fact that her family was poor, she often worked in the sports equipment room and art studio to earn some money. It was also because of her excellent character and education that she was worthy of being called the campus belle. There were thousands of students in the school. The principal naturally couldn't be familiar with everyone. However, he still had an impression of Michaela, who was performing at the top of her class. But now, he didn't understand because Michaela had a second identity besides her original poor identity. The main thing was that the disparity between the two identities was simply too great. The principal looked at the extremely simple file in his hand and finally put it down. He took off his glasses and wiped them. He asked the secretary, "This file can't be forged, right?" The secretary said, "That's not possible. Speaking of Michaela, I heard some news." "Oh, what?" "It happened a while ago. I also just remembered," the secretary said. Then she told him some rumors about Michaela. It was no longer a secret that Michaela found her long-lost brother. The teachers had heard the rumor but hadn't told any of the administration. Thus, the principal didn't know about it. Now that he heard this shocking news from the secretary, he couldn't help but sigh. He thought that it was no wonder that Harry and Michaela had different surnames, but they were siblings. It turned out that they were born of the same father and different mothers. The secretary only knew a limited amount of information, so she could only tell the principal so much. Seeing that the principal was silent, the secretary tried to ask, "Regarding Michaela, should we do something? After all, her brother sponsored a whole event with 10 million. The principal thought deeply and said, "Yes, although it's a little late in her high school career. Inform her teacher and see if there's anything she needs to take care of." The principal nodded. "Understood." The secretary nodded. Michaela was called to the office by her teacher. Her teacher had been complimenting her and then asked if there were any problems with her studies and how she usually got along with her classmates. Michaela was very confused and didn't know if her teacher was feeling sick. Usually, her teacher's attitude towards Michaela was the same as the rest of their students. She wasn't used to this kind of special treatment. The teacher was usually only interested in his students performing well on tests, because he would get a raise. Michaela was worried that something had happened because the teacher never bothered asking if she was okay. Michaela naturally didn't know about the conversation between Harry and the principal. She didn't know that the principal had instructed her teacher to keep her happy. She didn't think anything happened at school that could warrant this kind of behavior. She hadn't scored high on any tests, nor had she participated in any sports and won a medal. However, she had met Harry and was given her inheritance. Michaela didn't think that was why the teacher was acting differently. She met Harry a few days ago, so the news should have gotten to the teacher by now. Harry had let her use one of his luxury cars and took her home for lunch and dinner in his own luxury car. They weren't exactly secretive. Now, everyone in school knew that Michaela was not poor. She was the daughter of a wealthy family. The teacher had heard the rumors and seen the cars but wasn't going to do anything about it. He wasn't worried about Michaela getting angry with him over school matters. He knew how she always studied hard and paid attention in class. Her having money didn't matter to the teacher at all. It only mattered now because the principal told him to make sure that Michaela was happy. In the past, when Michaela was living with her mom and stepdad, other than those boys who were infatuated with her beauty, no one else liked her. Michaela didn't show much excitement on her face, nor did she become overbearing toward her teacher. Instead, she treated everyone like usual and smiled when they asked her how she was doing. She asked, "Teacher, if there is nothing else, can I go back?" Oh, there's nothing else. Go back and make the best use of your time to study, but don't tire yourself out too much. Don't want you to be overworked. If you tire yourself out, you won't do well on the exams, the teacher said with concern. Okay, thank you, teacher. Michaela said her goodbyes, neither servile nor overbearing, and then left the office. After she went home that night, Michaela asked Harry, Harry, did you talk to my teacher? Harry asked curiously, Why would you ask that? I just want to know. No, why are you asking? Michaela casually said. Oh, it's just that today the teacher's attitude toward me was different. I thought you told him to be nice to me. Harry smiled and said, I never did that. In his heart, he was still holding back a sentence. It was true that he didn't give money to his teacher, but he gave money to the principal. Furthermore, it wasn't just a small amount of money. He gave 10 million for the whole event. Michaela heaved a sigh of relief when she heard Harry say no. It's good. You didn't give them any money or gifts. Otherwise, they'd stop being good teachers. Harry asked. Why? I don't see why that would make things any different. Michaela said. That depends on the situation. I'm about to say goodbye to my high school life. Why should I give them gifts? Now you're thinking like a Parker. Harry gave her a thumbs up and praised her. Michaela said again, I think you shouldn't cook for me every day. Why is that? Is the food in the cafeteria that good? Harry asked. No, I just feel that we're attracting too much attention from the students. They're all acting differently around me and I'm not used to it. Different? Is that good or bad? Harry said with a smile. Michaela said helplessly, Isn't it obvious? Of course it's better. With the amount of money I have, no one wants to offend me. Then that's enough. This will be normal in the future. You'd have to get used to it sooner or later. I don't mind other people staring, but now I'm being pointed at everywhere I go. There are often some people I don't know who come over and try to be friendly. Michaela wasn't used to strangers trying to be friends with her. Harry waved his hand. Just ignore them. As long as you don't forget your real friends, you'll be fine. No matter how others treat you, remember that they have their own goals. All right, I was just complaining. There's going to be a lot of people like that in the future. You're also a very beautiful woman, so people are going to be bothering you a lot. So when it comes to people who want to suck up to you, as long as you remember to remain neutral and not be too mean, you'll be fine. Harry felt that it was necessary to give her some guidance. He'd figured all this out when he suddenly became rich. After all, she would have to face other people as the young lady of the Parker family in the future. Her life would never be the same. Michaela used to just be pretty. No one ever paid attention to her unless they had a crush on her. Now that she had become the daughter of a wealthy family, everyone wanted to be her friend and get some money from her. After settling Michaela down and sending her to bed, Harry quietly went out with June. Tonight, the artists and his company were about to arrive at Mountain City. Originally, they should have arrived tomorrow morning, but everyone wanted to see Harry sooner, so they all took an earlier flight. They didn't dare to put down their work and take the initiative to look for Harry. Now that Harry had invited them, they naturally had to rush over as soon as possible. Since they had already finished their work, they were able to fly to Mountain City on the earliest flight they could. A lot of girls were hoping Harry hadn't met anyone new, so they could still have the chance to catch Harry's heart, especially those who were good-looking. Their youth was short to begin with, so it was very hard to be able to maintain their beauty for a very short period of time. It was very common to see people who couldn't grasp a man's heart and be heartlessly abandoned when they were old. At the airport in Mountain City, Harry stood at the exit with his sunglasses on. Harry knew it was them when he saw the large group of girls, who were all wearing large concealing clothes. When celebrities went out, especially the more famous ones, they would do anything to not get noticed. Just spending time dealing with fans was enough to give them a headache. Celeste and the others, who were top stars, were no exception. They took a plane from Star Moon Entertainment and came over. They didn't have to worry about meeting annoying fans on the way. Harry hired 2 medium-sized private jets to fly them all out without attracting too much attention. The interior was very luxurious. The purpose was to provide convenience for the company's artists to travel around to work. They can't avoid contact with the public. In order to not be recognized, they had to disguise themselves. In a place like Mountain City, it was a hot day. A few of them still had to wear a wide hat and a pair of sunglasses on their faces. They even had to wear a scarf around their necks to cover their noses and mouths. Although this kind of dressing would make people suspicious, at the very least, they would cover their faces tightly so that they wouldn't be recognized. However, on this hot day, it was really miserable to cover it so tightly. Fortunately, when they came out, they saw Harry, and all of them rushed over with a cheer. They didn't expect Harry to come personally to pick them up. Then they saw the car behind Harry. They wanted to take off their coats and scarves to cool off. Harry, I missed you so much. Tammy ran the fastest. Let me sit in the car. I'm dying in this heat, she said. Harry chuckled as she ran into the car. The rest of the girls also quickly ran into the car. Harry jumped into the car and said with concern, "Don't blast the AC too much. You might cool down too fast and catch a cold." After saying that, he adjusted the temperature of the air conditioner by a few degrees. They were all happy that Harry still cared about them. They didn't need to worry about Harry not wanting to see them anymore. Harry had come in a luxurious van that could seat a dozen people. He knew it'd be easier to bring one car than to have a whole fleet of cars coming to pick up the girls. He also knew that the girls would fight to be in the same car as him, and he wanted to save himself the headache. Harry didn't want to attract too much attention, so he came up with a solution that everyone would be happy with. However, things often didn't go according to his expectations. Originally, everyone would be able to leave the airport immediately after getting in the car and head to the hotel that had already been booked. As soon as the car started up, it was suddenly blocked by a group of people who came out of nowhere. June, who was driving, suddenly stopped, causing everyone in the car to gasp in surprise. They all fell towards Harry. He knew they were all exaggerating their fall to get closer to him, so he was annoyed. "What's going on?" Harry helped the girls back to their seats and asked June. "It seems that some fans have blocked the way," June said. Fortunately, she wasn't driving very fast, and she still had time to stop the car. Harry suddenly felt a headache coming on. He hated people that crowded celebrities. They had seen the car was leaving and they still tried to jump out in front of it. The girls in the car were looking at each other with worried looks. Tammy was surprised and said, "How did they recognize us?" Jessica said, "Celeste took her scarf off outside the car." Celeste hurriedly said, "I only put it down for a second to breathe. There's no way they recognized me just from that, right?" Harry shook his head. He couldn't tell for sure. June blew the horn of the car a few times and tried to get the people in front of the car to leave. Unfortunately, none of the fans were persuaded. They didn't want to let their idols leave. "They won't get out of the way. What should we do? Should we ask the Wolf Guard to come out and clear the path?" June asked. Harry really hated these fanatical people. He couldn't put himself in their shoes either because he couldn't understand being so crazed to see a celebrity that they would willing to throw themselves into danger. However, Harry rejected June's request. The Wolf Guard was already here. They just didn't see the fans as a big enough threat to get themselves involved. Harry couldn't just call them over and disperse the fans. He had to think about the girls and how the public would view them if they treated their fans harshly. Apart from their personal behavior, their attitude towards the fans was also very important. If they heartlessly chased away all their fans, they would definitely be bombarded with smear headlines in the news the next day. Harry couldn't care less, but he had to think about the women around him. As top celebrities, they had to avoid negative news. Even if Harry had the ability to suppress those bad news reports in the media, he couldn't control the private communication between fans. "Inform the Wolf Guard not to act rashly. These people are just fans. Don't do anything to force them out," Harry instructed. "If we don't, we won't be able to leave." June felt troubled. Harry thought for a moment and said, "I'll get out of the car to negotiate." After saying that, he wanted to open the car door and walk out, but he was immediately stopped by everyone. June anxiously shouted, "Don't!" The woman in the car reached out their hands at the same time and pulled Harry's clothes and brought him back to the seat. "Don't go out. There's no way to reason with them," Celeste advised. The others also said, "They won't listen to you." Harry thought about it and felt that what they said was right. If Harry got out of the car, he'd only make everything worse. They'd probably tear Harry apart out of jealousy. Of course, Harry was not afraid of being forceful, but there was no need for things to escalate to that far. "Then what should we do? We can't just let these people block us like this, right?" Harry said. Celeste bit her lips and said, "I exposed us. Let me talk to them." Harry decisively shook his head. "That's even worse. Look at how many people are outside." A few of them immediately felt troubled. They saw that the fans outside were gathering more and more people, but there was no way to deal with them. Outside the car, the fans blocking the road recognized Celeste. International superstars always attracted a lot of fans. Harry had never followed Celeste before they met. He never knew just how famous she was. When Celeste's fans went crazy, it was really like a vicious dog pouncing on its food. Harry and the others were anxious inside the car, but the Wolf Guard outside was even more anxious. They weren't worried about the fans until they had completely surrounded the car. They weren't worried because they knew the girls and Harry were safe inside the car. The car was bulletproof and had all the latest technology to keep the people inside safe from pretty much everything. But now, the situation had become troublesome. None of the Wolf Guard expected that these fans would grow in size. At first, there were only 7 or 8 people blocking the way. But not long after, there were 20 or 30 people. They directly surrounded Harry's car from all directions. Everyone held their phones and took pictures of the car. Not only did they shout at Celeste in unison, but they also leaned on the window and frantically tried to take pictures of everyone in the car. From the looks of it, they wouldn't stop until they broke through the window. Fortunately, the windows of the car were heavily tinted. They couldn't see what was happening inside from the outside. For the time being, Wolfguard didn't have to worry about Harry's safety, even though the windows were constantly being hit by these crazy fans. The bulletproof glass wouldn't break so easily by people slamming on them with their bare hands. If Harry and the rest were to remain in a stalemate like this, these fans wouldn't leave until the sun came up. However, the Wolf Guard were trained for this kind of thing. With a lot of thought, they quickly came up with a solution. Mr. Parker, we've thought of a way to get rid of these people. When the opportunity arises, you should leave immediately. Wolfguard reported to Harry through the walkie-talkie. What's the plan? Harry asked. It's hard to say if it'll work, so we can't say it now. The Wolfguard didn't give a detailed report. They felt that it was still uncertain if the plan would work or not, so they decided to give it a try. Just as Harry was waiting quietly, he heard a loud shout from outside the crowd. I saw Isa Ivy, over there. What? Another guard said. More than half of the fans who were blocking Harry immediately ran away. The number of people surrounding the car decreased. Most importantly, the front of the car was clear. June saw an opportunity and stepped on the accelerator. Tammy teased Celeste. Take a look at all your loyal fans. Isa is more popular than you. Celeste shrugged her shoulders indifferently. I don't care, Harry laughed. I'm just glad we could get away. Isa was about as famous as Celeste, which is probably the only reason the plan worked. Some of the fans thought that it'd be easier to see Isa Ivy if they could catch her outside of a car. Therefore, more than half of the fans ran away, giving Harry and the others a chance to escape. Unfortunately, those fans who left were destined to be disappointed, because there was no Isa Ivy at all. It was the Wolf Guard who deliberately shouted in order to create an opportunity for Harry to leave. Isa Ivy wasn't with them due to a conflict in schedules and had been booked to do a couple of shows overseas. They were all sad to not have her with them, but thought she was lucky not to be hoarded by fans. June seemed to have been traumatized by those fans. She was afraid that she would be chased by more fanatical people. Harry couldn't help reminding her to drive slowly a few times, but he knew she was just being careful. A lot of the girls were worried they'd crash because of how fast June was driving. They looked frightened. However, no one dared to tell June to stop. None of them wanted to speak up. They all thought June was scary. When they arrived at the hotel, they learned their lesson. The girls all covered their faces tightly and didn't dare to expose their faces anymore. Harry had already booked the rooms. They were all luxurious suites. He took them all to their respective suites. He ran out of the hotel with June and rushed back to the villa. When they got home, Harry, who was standing in the doorway and taking off his shoes, found that the light in the living room suddenly lit up. June, who was behind him, very vigilantly pushed Harry behind her. Then she stretched out her hand to her waist in case someone was inside the house waiting to attack. In the end, she realized that it was just a false alarm. Michaela was sitting on the couch alone. June let out a sigh of relief. Just now she thought that it was a thief who entered the house. But in the next second, she and Harry were stunned to see that Michaela's eyes were red, and her eyes were filled with tears. Michaela, what happened to you? Harry looked at Michaela, whose eyes were filled with tears, and his mind went blank. June stood next to Harry and then watched as he went to comfort Michaela, so she left the room. Harry sat beside Michaela and very caringly wiped away her tears. He asked, What's wrong? Why are you crying? Michaela shook her head and said in an aggrieved manner, No, I just came downstairs and neither of you was home. I thought that you... She trailed off. I had some business that I needed to take care of. What do you think happened? Harry asked. I thought you didn't want me anymore. You left me here alone and didn't tell me you have to go. Michaela started to cry again. Harry didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You're silly. Why would I leave you? I don't know. I was alone in this big house and I got scared. All right. It's my fault. I'm sorry we didn't tell you. Harry quickly admitted his mistake. After a moment of calming down, Michaela finally stopped crying, but she was still sniffling. Harry hadn't gotten to know Michaela entirely. He just assumed she'd be fine at home alone. On the surface, Michaela was still happy every day, but in fact, she felt very insecure in her heart. Because she had been traumatized since she was young, she was afraid that everything was just a dream. Someday when she woke up, she'd be back in her house with her mother and stepfather. She went to sleep the night before and woke up when Harry had left for the airport. Michaela was a light sleeper. Not long after Harry left, she suddenly woke up when she heard the garage door close. The house was dead silent, and Michaela thought that the worst had happened. As expected, after she nervously walked out of the room, she called Harry a few times but got no response. June didn't reply either, and Michaela panicked. Actually, at this time, she took out her phone to call Harry and got no response. She thought Harry had left her, or perhaps he regretted ever meeting her. He didn't want to see his younger sister anymore. When she saw Harry coming back, she thought she'd be happy. After all, her previous worries were all proven to be untrue. Harry hadn't left her and had returned home. Michaela was never actually alone. The wolf guard had been watching the house in secret. They knew Michaela was safe, but she didn't know that they were outside. In the end, Harry was the one to blame for this incident. He had no choice but to give Michaela a heartfelt apology. Harry sat with her and comforted Michaela for a long time before he finally got her to stop crying. All right, now you know that you worried for nothing, right? Hurry up and go to sleep. You still have class tomorrow. In the future, don't leave without telling me. I was really scared, Michaela instructed. I promise it won't happen again. I'll take you shopping tomorrow as an apology. Michaela shook her head and said, I don't want to go shopping. I've got all the clothes that I want. Okay, I'll buy something else then, Harry said, and put his arm around Michaela's shoulder to send her back to the bedroom. When Harry closed her door, June quietly appeared again. Is she all right? Harry smiled bitterly and said, Yes, it wasn't easy to get her to calm down. June said seriously, I don't think you're seeing the bigger picture. Harry asked curiously, What's the bigger picture? June said, At the very least, you have overlooked how much she relies on you. Harry held his chin and said, No way. I think Michaela is quite independent. She doesn't seem like the kind of girl that relies on anyone but herself. June shook her head. As Michaela's elder brother, Harry took her feelings for granted. He felt that he had been doing enough to make up for her childhood. However, material gifts were clearly unable to make up for the love she didn't receive when she was young. Michaela had been neglected for so long and was emotionally fragile. Now that she had abandoned her old family and returned to Harry's family, she was trying to be good for Harry in case she made him angry. She was afraid that if she didn't do well and made Harry unhappy, he'd leave her. Before Harry met her, Michaela had been planning to leave her abusive family, but now, Harry had given her a new family. She thought that she finally didn't have to keep running and could be happy. Therefore, Michaela didn't care about buying things. Instead, what she needed was a family that loved her. She wanted Harry to love her the way she wished her old family should have. She didn't want Harry to hate her. Harry hadn't thought of this, but June had figured it out. Now Harry knew, and he could adjust. He reflected deeply on himself and decided that he had to take good care of Michaela in the future. With just this little sister, Harry as the elder brother couldn't let her suffer anymore. June saw that Harry understood. She didn't say anything else. After all, she was a guard. She didn't want to impose on Harry. Although Harry had told her that she can speak her mind, June had been too self-disciplined to ever speak so candidly. A few days had passed since Harry picked up the girls from the airport. The celebration at Mountain City High School had finally begun. Today was the happiest and most exciting day for the high school students, because they didn't need to attend those boring and troublesome classes anymore. They could play for the whole day. What was more exciting was that they would be able to see the idols they liked. Parents were invited as well to enjoy the day with their kids and celebrate all their hard work. Moreover, the school anniversary event of Mountain City High School had long become a tradition. Its influence on the surrounding city was large enough that most businesses planned to attend with nearby booths to promote themselves. Though entering the school was not easy, not everyone could walk in without an invitation. Donors and event planners were the only people allowed inside the school. Among these people, some of them graduated from this high school and had such a grand event at their alma mater. As long as they had time, they would definitely attend. Furthermore, this celebration was sponsored by those alumni. Every year when it was held, there would be various television channels, media channels, or live broadcasts that followed everything that was going on. The other schools in the area also received invitations to the event. All were welcome to attend, and it brought a lot of rival schools closer together. The newer schools hadn't built their own traditions yet, so they attended this event instead. That gave them the opportunity to set up some group activities that anyone could attend. A lot of students would set up games with handmade prizes. Others did face painting. It all depended on how much time they could spend on planning. Freshmen and sophomores had more time to participate because they didn't need to take any entrance exams. Michaela didn't have any time to prepare anything, but she was happy to see all of her classmates and their fun activities. On the day of the opening ceremony of the event, the entrance of Mountain City High School had already been arranged with a welcoming arch and a red carpet. The guests began to enter one after another. The parents walked in from the school gate. As for the invited celebrities, they were driven in from the nearby hotels. The added secrecy was needed in case they were recognized. Harry had decided the van he took to the airport would be enough. He didn't need his employees riding on a school bus with other celebrities. This van had an independent dressing room, which made it very convenient for them to get ready if there was no room in the school. After all, they had to perform, so they had to make a lot of preparations. As for the other artists, they were all in the dressing rooms arranged by the school. Harry, on the other hand, was considering the fact that his artists were too famous. If they shared the makeup room with others, it might cause chaos. Harry still remembered it clearly when he was at the airport. When fans went crazy, it was unreasonable. Delaying any performance would be a disaster. Harry had prepared all of this for Michaela. He couldn't allow any accidents to happen, so Harry made his artists remain anonymous. In the school, other than the principal and his secretary, no one else knew they were here. No one knew that the celebrities who came to perform today were the most famous group in the world. The only reason no one caught on was because the school kept the names of the performers secret. They'd done this for a few years, so people would have to attend to find out who was performing. Harry didn't go in with the artists. He first got out of the car at the entrance of the school. Then, like the other parents, he took the invitation card and queued up at the front gate. But just as Harry was queuing up, something unexpected happened. Michaela's mother and stepfather also came. They were aware Michaela was still in Mountain City. She stayed in town and went to school. She even stayed in a luxurious villa with Harry. They hated Michaela even more for leaving them for her rich brother. Leaving them in their old house and only leaving a small amount of her wealth to them was unacceptable. They had worked so hard to raise her up, but in the end, she left. Now, she has become the daughter of a wealthy family. She didn't even look back at her old family. Although Harry had given them $2 million to shut them up, but they wanted more. In the past, they thought $2 million was a huge sum of money, but with the amount of money Harry had, they knew they could get more money from him. Harry was so rich. Since he took Michaela away, they thought they deserved more. They wanted to negotiate $200 million, but would take $20 million at the very least. Therefore, because of jealousy and greed, they had long wanted to find Michaela again and demand money from Harry. They never got the chance to stop Michaela since she arrived and left in a car. The Wolf Guard had also been guarding the school, and Michaela's old family was too scared to approach them. But today was different. The school anniversary event was open to all the parents of the students. They felt that they could openly come in and have a proper discussion with Michaela. They wanted to convince Michaela, who could ask Harry for more money since they had raised her whole life. Besides, after all, she was Michaela's mother. She thought that counted for something. Because there were too many people queuing at the school entrance, Harry was not far from them, but they didn't see him. Because Michaela's parents didn't have an invitation to enter the school, when the queue reached them, they were stopped. "What are you doing? Why can't you let us in?" "Those without an invitation are not allowed to enter the school. That's the rule," the security guard at the door said. Michaela's mother couldn't accept it. "What kind of logic is this? We're parents. So what if we don't have an invitation card? Why would you want to stop us from entering?" The security guard said expressionlessly, "You said your parents. How can I be sure that you're not lying to me?" "Oh my, you're really stubborn. Ask the people around you. Everyone in the neighborhood knows who we're. I'm Michaela's mother. Why can't I go in?" The security guard continued to speak with an expressionless face. "I don't care what others say. If I say you aren't allowed, you can't enter." "Hey, you don't make sense. Someone make him understand," Michaela's mother shouted at the people around her. Although they knew that Michaela had been taken away by her long-lost brother, but they didn't know the finer details. Now that they saw the security guards at the school's entrance blocking them from entering, they thought that Michaela should be at the event with her parents. Sir, they're telling the truth. Yeah, they've come every year with Michaela. The school probably made a mistake, right? Hearing the surrounding people speak up for her, Michaela's mother looked at the security guard with a proud expression. Did you hear that? Let me tell you, our daughter is not someone you should offend. Let us in or we'll have you fired. Michaela's mother stared at the security guard with a scowl. Hurry up and let people in. It is just an invitation. What is the big deal? It's such a hot day. There are still so many people waiting in line. The people behind began to become impatient and wanted the line to move along. They were standing under the sun on a hot day, and there wasn't enough shade for everyone to stay cool. When the security guard who checked the invitation list saw the agitated crowd, he didn't dare to make a decision so easily. He quickly called his boss and one of the school representatives. What do you think we should do with them? The security guard gave a brief report and asked. Before the people in the school could say anything, Michaela's mother spoke first. How does your school work? Why aren't we allowed to enter? You didn't give us an invitation. It's your fault. Why are you making things difficult for us? Michaela's stepfather spoke up. The neighbors of a nearby neighborhood also chimed in. Yeah, we can all testify. They're parents and should have gotten an invitation. The security captain was only responsible for maintaining order to prevent chaos. He didn't have to deal with the logistics. The young school representative didn't want to deal with Michaela's annoying parents. He looked at them and thought they wouldn't try to sneak their way into the event. So if he sent them away and they were parents, he could get reprimanded. Normally this wouldn't be a problem, but the principal wouldn't allow anything to happen to ruin the event. Without an invitation, no one was allowed to enter. This was also something that the principal emphasized in every meeting. If he let them in and they caused problems, the principal would be furious. The school representative didn't understand why this year's event was more strict than the previous years. The principal was afraid of angering Harry. He had sponsored the event with $10 million, and such a huge financial backer wasn't someone to be trifled with. Michaela's old neighbors were just trying to help and had no idea that her parents were using her to get money. They didn't know that Michaela had basically cut off all relations with this family. The school knew they weren't at fault, but they couldn't explain it to the crowd at the front gate. Seeing that the crowd had started to become noisy, the leader was so anxious that his forehead was covered in sweat. In his heart, he was in a dilemma and didn't know how to deal with this troublesome matter. After thinking for a long time, he finally understood that he couldn't make a decision. There was still a superior up there. After calming the crowd down, he quickly made a call to the principal. The person who answered the call was the principal's secretary. He made his instructions very clear. No person can enter without an invitation. Okay, the representative agreed. This time, when he faced Michaela's family again, he didn't have the same smiling expression as before. Instead, he said coldly, if you don't have an invitation, you can't go in. Quickly move aside so we can get everyone else in. No, why should I? You're being unreasonable. Michaela's mother was anxious. Excuse me, I'm sorry, let me through. Harry couldn't watch anymore. Harry was quite grateful to the school for stopping them. Harry knew they'd come to cause trouble. It'd be best if Michaela never saw them again for the rest of her life. He ignored the dissatisfied gazes of the people around him who he pushed away. It's you? Michaela's mother said in fear when she saw Harry. Harry raised his head and looked at Michaela's mother and stepfather with disdain. Seeing that they were dressed quite well today, he knew that they hadn't waited long to spend all the money he gave them. Then he said to the representative, I'm Michaela's brother. This is my invitation. They're not here for Michaela, so thank you for stopping them. The crowd was in an uproar. The representative's face was full of surprise. He finally understood. Fortunately, he didn't let them in. He knew they were trying to get in and cause trouble. The surrounding spectators all booed at Harry. I knew long ago that they were swindlers and still wanted to sneak into the school, said an old man. Hearing the discussions of the crowd, Michaela's mother immediately panicked. No, we're Michaela's parents. Really, if you don't believe me, you can ask my neighbors. They can testify for me. However, Michaela's mother's explanation was useless. The neighbors felt that something was wrong and didn't want to get involved. All of them stepped back at the same time. No one dared to speak anymore. Come on, tell them who we are. What's going on? Michaela's mother looked at the silent neighbors in surprise. No one said anything. Now that the matter had escalated, no one wanted to involve themselves in their family drama. Besides, Most of their neighbors didn't like them all that much. They were nice to them because they were neighbors, but they hated how they treated Michaela. They saw how Harry treated Michaela and knew he was better in every way. If Harry hated Michaela's parents, then the crowd thought they should also hate them. Harry looked at Michaela's mother with a sneer and said, "Still not giving up? You accepted my $2 million and you agreed to leave Michaela alone. What nonsense are you talking about? I'm her mother. How can I leave her?" Michaela's mother argued. Harry replied, "Does she even want to see you?" Michaela's mother was speechless. In the past, she knew very well how she treated Michaela. "I told you to never bother Michaela again. Since you can't seem to listen to simple instructions, I'll make sure you never forget our deal," Harry said with a cold face and waved his hand. A few of the nearby wolf guard came to the front of the line. Michaela's mother refused to give up and wanted to fight. However, her stepfather was not a man of character. When he saw the wolf guard, he immediately gave in. "Harry, please, let's talk. We know we were wrong." Harry had a playful expression on his face. "Oh, now you understand?" "I understand. We shouldn't have come today. I promise that we'll never bother Michaela again." "Then hurry up and get lost!" Harry shouted. Michaela's parents walked away from the school and back to their home. The crowd booed them till they were out of view. They had all figured out that Michaela's parents knew Harry was rich and they wanted to get more money from him. The crowd began to discuss how evil and greedy Michaela's parents were. Hearing this, Michaela's mother and stepfather ran even faster. It caused the crowd to laugh mockingly. They forgot they had been waiting for so long. Watching them run away made them laugh. Although Harry didn't want to have a big fight with this family in public, he couldn't let them weasel their way into the event. Had Harry not been kind, he'd have dealt with Michaela's parents and made sure to force them out of the town. Harry didn't want to be cruel, especially now that he had to take care of Michaela. When he couldn't see Michaela's parents, Harry showed the invitation card to the security guard at the entrance and walked into the school slowly. Only then did the onlookers realize that Harry had cut the queue. They wanted to complain, but after thinking about it, no one dared to make a sound. They figured annoying Harry was not something they wanted to do. After Harry entered the school, he remembered that he had cut in line. He laughed. He could thank Michaela's family for two things: Michaela and the chance to cut in line. Harry also thought that he had sponsored the event. There was probably a VIP entrance he could have gone to. The school wouldn't reprimand him if they had found out he cut in line. However, Harry didn't want to be treated differently than anyone else. He wanted to experience what it felt like to be a parent, just like an ordinary person. The only way he could truly experience that is if he attended the event like any other parent. After Michaela entered university, Harry wouldn't have this kind of experience again. After entering the school, Harry was not in a hurry to contact Michaela. The school had already arranged the location of the students and their parents. There was a number on the back of the invitation card. Harry could find his seat based on the number card later. The school had organized the seats so every parent would sit with their child. As for now, Harry wanted to go and see the artists he invited. They were not difficult to find. Behind the stage of the venue, there was a small parking lot. The other artists got out of the car and entered the backstage of the venue to put on makeup. Harry's artists, on the other hand, did this job in the large van in the parking lot. The van had everything they needed to get ready for any event. It also helped to keep their identity hidden, so no one knew who was performing. Since Harry wanted to give Michaela a surprise, he wanted to keep his artists a secret till they went on stage. However, when Harry walked towards the parking lot, he coincidentally met the principal, who was walking in a hurry. Today was the biggest day of the school year. The principal was naturally very busy. He'd greeted the other artists and officials as quickly as he could. When he got to Harry, he slowed down to have a chat with him. "Mr. Parker, you're here. You should have told me you had arrived. I'd have come out to greet you." The principal kept apologizing. Harry didn't mind and waved his hand. "I know, you're busy enough." "You're too kind. I still have to show some decency. Let my secretary take care of anything you need." The principal hurriedly called his secretary. Harry declined. "There's no need. I'm going to meet my employees. You're busy. I don't want to keep you any longer." "Thank you." The principal rubbed his hands and said. Harry smiled and waved at him before leaving. Then he turned around and left. After Harry left, the guests next to the principal who had been invited were very puzzled. "Who was that just now? Why were you so polite to him?" an older man said. The principal smiled mysteriously. "That was Mr. Parker. He's one of the biggest sponsors for this event." "Mr. Parker? I don't think I've heard of him. I know all the big names in the city. Surely I'd know him. Someone asked curiously. Heh, he isn't from Mountain City. He's come in and funded the majority of this event himself. The principal whispered mysteriously again. What? Everyone exclaimed in shock. The school had set up a website where everyone could donate to the school for the event. Everyone could see who had donated and what amount they donated. The other officials had checked the fund before the event and never saw Harry's large donation. They were shocked when the principal told them how much he'd donated. It was very confusing. Previously, there were people who guessed that the school's official website had made a mistake in the data and had forgotten to announce it. Or the principal was bluffing, trying to get others to donate more. The total amount donated, not including Harry's donation, was a little over $3 million. Apart from Harry's $10 million, the largest donation was the $2.7 million sponsorship fee from the Belleton Company. Initially, the Belleton Company thought that they had donated the most, but after seeing the updated public announcement, they realized that there were even more. $10 million was way too much. It was more than any other sponsor. The school never made it public who had made the donation. This made the Belleton Company very angry. Hence, during this year's school anniversary celebration, the Belleton Company was so angry that they didn't plan to attend. Harry had made it clear that his name shouldn't be publicized, and the principal reluctantly agreed. In fact, the principal was secretly cursing in his heart. The Belleton Company had such a huge business in the city, and he didn't want to make them angry. Although the Belleton Company's assets were valued at over $10 billion, most of those assets were fixed and they didn't have many liquid funds at all. To be able to take out more than $2 million was more than enough to put a strain on their finances. The Belleton Company was donating to receive some good press. They didn't get anything out of the donation, except the good light it would give their company when the public knew how much they had donated. The executives at the company had more liquid funds, but none of them wanted to pay anything out of their own salaries. They also wanted their company name to show up on the fund instead of their personal names. At the very least, compared to the other big names in Mountain City, they had donated much more. But compared to Harry, they were nothing. Harry wasn't as restricted as the Belleton Company. This was because Harry had his own funds and revenue streams that he could change at will. Therefore, it wasn't a big deal for Harry to sponsor the event with $10 million. He didn't need to have meetings and prepare financial reports. All he had to do was open his bank account and transfer the funds. The people that were following the principal would never have guessed that the young man they had just met would be one of the richest men in the world. They wanted to know who he was and kept asking the principal for more details. They wanted to know everything they could about this strange young man. If they could find out who he is, then they could try and find a way to do business with him. The result was very disappointing. The principal smiled bitterly and said, "Don't ask me. I don't know either." The principal had only met Harry in that short meeting. He'd been asked to keep everything he does a secret. Beyond that, he didn't know where Harry came from or where he got his money from. He was just happy he could get more funding for the school event. "No way. Don't tell me you still want to keep it a secret," someone said unhappily. The reason why they were in such a hurry to find out about Harry's background was because Harry had shown that he was extremely wealthy. They were all desperately greedy. If they didn't get to meet Harry officially, they'd regret it for the rest of their lives. A lot of the richer people in Mountain City were all successful in their own businesses, but once they left Mountain City, they were nothing. If they could get close to Harry, they would have the opportunity to expand their businesses to larger markets. Unfortunately, the principal really didn't know about Harry's background, so he couldn't tell them. The principal couldn't help but say when he was asked by everyone, "I know about as much as you all do, though if you connect the dots, you can figure out who he really is." "What the heck? Why are you keeping us in suspense? Hurry up and tell us," a man pleaded. Seeing that everyone was begging to know more, the principal hurriedly said, "Today's school celebration is different from the previous years. We've got some well-known performers that Harry invited himself. Can you guess who?" Everyone expressed their dissatisfaction once again. They didn't want to play any games. They only wanted information. The group began to get angry and started threatening the principal. The principal said helplessly, "You're all so pathetic, maybe I won't tell you. Tell me or I'll pull my funding from the event." The man said, "Hey, don't be so rash, I'll tell you." The principal stopped joking. The principal then slowly said, "This year, Celeste will be performing on stage." "What?" the man yelled. The principal continued, "There's also the most popular girl group in the country, Dream Angel." One of the taller officials fainted. When they heard that Celeste and the Dream Angel group were coming, They immediately became excited. Everyone had heard about the Dream Angel group. If they had advertised their performance here, the line to get in would be several miles long. They were ecstatic to see Celeste perform live. Most of the time, all her tickets were sold out, and none of them could go to see her live. Now that the principal had personally admitted that Celeste and the Dream Angel group had come, everyone was excited. These officials were annoyed earlier when the principal came begging them to donate to the fund. But now, their attitude has changed 180 degrees. When they looked at the principal now, they thought they were looking at a dear friend. Some of the officials had started doing the math on the whole event. They knew that marketing for a celebrity like Celeste would cost hundreds of millions of dollars. The school fund had only reached 30 million. They figured there would be no way that Celeste would attend such a small venue for so little money. Someone said in disbelief, "Principal, is Celeste really here?" The principal nodded. "That's right. Mr. Parker invited her." The principal added, "To be precise, Mr. Parker didn't invite them over. He ordered them to come." "Ah? Why?" The principal shook his head and said, "I'm not kidding because Celeste and the others all work for Mr. Parker's entertainment company." "Oh my God. He owns Star Moon Entertainment?" Someone exclaimed. They had all heard of the new company and how it shot to the top of the industry in record time. After the introduction of all kinds of talents and the annexation of a stronger entertainment company, Harry used a contract that paid better than his competitors to attract a lot of talented artists. From that moment on, Star Moon Entertainment soared to the sky and no one could stop it anymore. The entertainment companies were divided into 5 grades. It was based on the level of fame the artists had under the company. Harry, on the other hand, had the world's best. He also had the #1 female group in the country, along with various second-tier, third-tier, and intern artists. The entire company was structured well, allowing for even growth for all their artists. Harry could provide all the funds necessary for the company to expand and improve if it was ever needed. Of course, now that the company had risen to great heights, Harry didn't need to invest in it anymore. He had even started to earn more money from it. Harry had completely become a hands-off manager now, enjoying the fruits of his labor. Of course, because the entertainment industry was different from any other, it was hard to branch out from one country to the next. Therefore, there was no such thing as a world-renowned entertainment company. However, after an entertainment company became bigger, they would have more opportunities and confidence to collaborate with other countries. Therefore, when they heard that Harry might be the boss behind Star Moon Entertainment, the people around the principal couldn't help but be shocked. The main thing they focused on was that when celebrities reached a certain level of popularity, most of them would choose to fly solo in order to obtain more profit and freedom. And international superstars generally would start their own companies. However, Celeste and Issa Ivy, when they had peaked in their careers, they chose to sign a contract with Star Moon Entertainment and become part of Harry's company. This surprised everyone. They all chatted with themselves and followed the principal away from Harry. After bidding farewell to the principal and the others, no one else came to talk to Harry. Harry quietly walked to the parking lot and reached the car that his artists were getting ready in. He knocked on the car door. When the people inside saw that it was Harry through the window, they quickly opened the door and welcomed him in. "Hello, sir." The bodyguards of the Wolf Guard stood at the door and greeted him. As usual, Harry had some of his Wolf Guard on security duty for the evening. He wanted to make sure his people were well protected. A few people from the Wolf Guard were assigned to the van. There were also a few cars in the parking lot that were being used to watch the crowd. There were also more than a dozen people from the Wolf Guard following and protecting the artists. Harry nodded at the guards. "Where are the girls? Are they all preparing?" "Yes, they are all in the dressing room now," the guard replied. "All right, I got it. Carry on," Harry said and continued to walk inside. The van was large and could be extended to have a second floor. The van had been specially modified. The first floor was for the guards and assistants to rest, or for the artists to prepare food and drinks. The second floor was for the artists to rest, and it also took care of entertainment and leisure, and there was the dressing room. In the dressing room, there were all kinds of equipment and cosmetics, and they were all world-class brands. In the changing room, Celeste and the others had already put their clothes on. Of course, these clothes were prepared by the company. Every artist had a special finance department set up for them by the company. They were in charge of purchasing all the necessary materials and didn't need to worry about finding their own materials. The dressing room was a large open room. After Harry opened the door, He found that other than the makeup artist who was still preparing, the artists were not there. The makeup artist's back was facing the door as if she was preparing something. She didn't notice Harry opening the door. Seeing this, Harry didn't want to disturb their work, so he gently closed the door. He went to the changing room next door and pushed the door open without thinking. Normally, if there were people inside the changing room, the door would definitely be locked. However, this was inside the van, so no one expected that anyone would open the door. Harry pushed the door open. As if time was slowed, Harry knew he had made a huge mistake. He only caught a glimpse of the room inside, and he hurriedly closed the door behind him. In just a few seconds, the women inside were all stunned. It was as if their brains had yet to react to what had just happened. When the door was closed, Harry leaned against the door and took a deep breath. Only then did he hear a few piercing screams from inside. Harry leaned against the door and grimaced as his face grew red. The assistants and bodyguards below knew that it was Harry who caused the commotion, so they didn't find it strange when they heard the scream. They looked at each other, smiled, and pretended they didn't hear anything. The girls had all been surprised by the door being opened. A few of them screamed sharply, but when they saw Harry, they calmed down. The screams stopped abruptly, and the makeup artist went out to see who had opened the door. "Oh, it's just you," one girl said. "Why didn't you knock? We thought it was someone else." "Sorry about that. I figured since the door was unlocked that everyone would be ready," Harry said. "I wasn't thinking. I should have knocked." The makeup artists weren't angry with Harry. They thought they'd caught a peeping Tom. Some of the male makeup artists were worried they'd have to fight someone, which might ruin the whole night. Harry knew that he should have knocked, and that the girls' screaming was completely understandable. What he thought was odd was that they let the male makeup artists in and had no problem with them. Harry trusted his employees to only hire the best, so he was sure they got their jobs on merit. But he still found it a bit odd. However, Harry wouldn't chase them away just because of his own personal thoughts. After all, they were all experts in the industry. He'd be a fool to fire someone based on his own narrow perspective. As long as they did a good job, Harry wouldn't fire them without reason. Furthermore, Harry had given Star Moon Entertainment to Chelsea. It'd ultimately be her job to fire them if something were to happen. Harry wiped his brow with a handkerchief and stuffed it back into his pocket. When Celeste and the others hurriedly put on their clothes and came out, they couldn't help but roll their eyes when they saw Harry. "Who doesn't knock on the door before they enter a room?" Tammy complained. Harry rolled his eyes. "How would I know anyone was inside? The door wasn't locked." Celeste, on the other hand, was not shy at all. She generously gave Harry a flirtatious glance. She said, "I think you knew we'd be in there." Harry blushed. "Don't make assumptions," Harry said. The makeup artist packed their things and said, "We're pretty much done, Mr. Parker. We'll be going now. Shall we tell the guards to lock the door on our way out?" Harry's face turned even redder. The women looked at him and giggled. Tammy's coquettish eyes sparkled. "You didn't want to stay at the hotel, but now you don't even knock? You're a strange man." Celeste said, "You men are all the same." Harry couldn't help but think that he was lucky to be where he was right at that moment. He never really appreciated how he was adored by all these beautiful women. He was happy that they all cared about him and liked working for his company. Michaela was still waiting for him to meet up with her. Harry had only come to the van to check up on his friends and employees. He never planned to stay so long and wanted to get away. Harry had been trying to figure out a way to leave so he could go and see Michaela. Harry felt panic in his heart. "Don't forget what you need to do when you go on stage. I'll leave so you can all prepare." After saying this, Harry tried to run away. "Why are you running? You just got here. Surely you can stay a while so we can catch up." Tammy pulled Harry back. The other girls weren't going to let Harry leave anyway. Just as Harry was going to push his way to the door, a wave of noise came from outside. "I'm taking this van. Everyone inside, quickly come out and empty the space." Harry wasn't angry because this had obviously created an excuse for him to escape. "All of you stay in the van. I'll go see what's going on," Harry instructed, then lifted his leg and walked away. "Who is it?" Tammy said unhappily. "Seriously, why didn't the bodyguards outside stop him?" Celeste was also dissatisfied. Harry ran out of the van and saw that the wolf guard had stopped a group of people. They created a barrier but didn't want to be too rough considering that they were on school property and in a very public area. Harry sized up these noisy people and found that they had brought along their own bodyguards. Behind them were a group of women, surrounding a man who looked too full of himself. This man had long, luxurious hair. At a glance, he looked more like a girl than anything. What gave it away was his much deeper voice. His eyes were painted with thick eyeshadow and had long, sparkly eyelashes. His face was covered in a thick layer of makeup. It was as if he was wearing a mask, and Harry couldn't really tell what the man would look like without the makeup. His lips were covered with a thick lipstick. If it wasn't for the fact that his neck has an obvious Adam's apple, Harry would have thought that he was a woman. Harry had been comparing this man's makeup with the work his company's makeup artists had done. He was happy knowing that his employees could apply makeup and make someone look good. Clearly, this man didn't understand what he was doing with makeup and just looked like a clown. "What's going on?" Harry asked the wolf guard beside him. "These people want to use the van for their own makeup and wardrobe." The wolf guard was speechless. Harry was speechless. "Haven't you guys figured out the situation? We need to put on makeup. We are now taking your van. Hurry up and make space," a woman said arrogantly. Of course, the wolf guard wouldn't make way for them. They all looked at these people as if they were looking at fools. "Hurry up, you guys don't have ears. My friend is a big star invited by the school. If you don't get out of the way, we'll have to kick you out," the girl said with a stern voice. Harry finally understood one thing. This was another star invited by the school, but he seemed to think too highly of himself. One of the girls called him Kyle, and he seemed to think that being invited by the school gave him full reign of the campus. Harry had never heard of him before and figured he was new to being a star. The fame had gotten to his head, and he saw himself as superior to everyone. Originally, Kyle had thought that coming to this event would boost his career and he could start making more money. However, he was average at best and probably wouldn't ever get as famous as he would dream. In order to fit the part he wanted to play, Kyle had begun acting like he was the most famous man in the world. After coming to school, he was unhappy when he saw the dressing room. Kyle had criticized it and stormed off, feeling like he was being tricked into some low-rate event that wouldn't make him famous. The dressing room that was prepared had been set up to the exact standard of most dressing rooms. They thought it'd be nice to give Kyle his own room, but had found that he was prone to temper tantrums. The receptionist in the school was at a loss. She didn't know what to do. They could only say that they would do as they were told. They had no better dressing room set up. Unfortunately, Kyle didn't want to listen to the receptionist, so he left to find a better dressing room. When he was on his way out, Kyle noticed the large van behind the stage and noticed it was expanded to be a full-on dressing room. A few of the makeup artists came out of the van with Harry. Harry had noticed that Kyle had brought his own makeup artists, but they were standing to the side. When he saw Harry's makeup artist, he was pleasantly surprised. All makeup artists were dressed in their own industry. Others might not be able to tell, but those in the same industry could tell at a glance. Kyle's makeup artist immediately went back to report the news to Kyle. "Hey, they have dressing rooms in that van." Everyone was stunned. At this moment, one of the receptionists was catching up with Kyle, trying to get him to stay and perform. The people in the school were dumbfounded. "What? How did I not know about this?" Harry's van was a very special model that had been customized by his company to accommodate their many artists. It was a supporting vehicle specially designed for celebrities. Kyle and the others had thought that the van was set up for another artist and should have been given to Kyle. Kyle had figured that if anyone at this event should have gotten to use the van, it should have been him. Kyle and the others didn't listen to the school representative. They wanted to use the luxury van and rushed over before anyone else could get to it. When they saw the men standing outside of it, they knew someone had got there first, and they wanted to kick them out. That was why they ran to Harry's car and demanded to use it. Hurry up, move the things inside, be careful, these things are very expensive. You can't afford to pay for them if they are damaged," Kyle's assistant said. Kyle was a big shot, and he didn't say anything throughout the whole process. Harry walked forward and said, "Where do you think you're going?" The female assistant acted surprised and shouted, "And who are you? You're just some bodyguard. Get out of the way so Kyle can get in to do his makeup." Harry couldn't help but burst out laughing. He pointed at Kyle and said, "That clown? I'm not sure he needs a mirror. Looks like he puts it on with a rolling pin." Kyle immediately stomped his feet and shouted like a child, "I want that dressing room." As he said that, the thick layer of powder on his face fell down like snow. Harry spread his hands and said helplessly, "You see, it's like it's snowing. He doesn't need a mirror. I'm surprised he doesn't drive his fans away with how bad he looks." The wolf guard couldn't help but laugh. They looked at the freak in front of them and thought he was too ugly to be any kind of real celebrity. However, Harry and the others didn't know that Kyle was someone who prided himself on his looks and hated the idea that anyone would criticize his face. "I've got like 10 million fans. How can you say something so horrible? I'll go talk to that principal and have him fire you." Kyle was flustered and exasperated. However, his screaming didn't seem to have any effect. He thought Harry worked for the school and was keeping the luxury van for some other celebrity. He even turned a blind eye to the wolf guard beside him. This was the first time Harry had seen someone that was so clueless. "You're mistaken. This is a private van, not a school van. Go scream at someone else." Harry waved his hand and chased him away like a dog. "How dare you look down on me? Why else would this van be back here if the school didn't own it? It's not like a loser like you could afford it." Harry was speechless. The guy in front of him was out of his mind. He thought tonight would be fun and he'd be able to hang out with his sister and give her the best surprise of her life. He didn't want to cause too much trouble and didn't want to overshadow the school's event. However, he never expected to find trouble with a bunch of high schoolers, let alone an arrogant, self-centered moron like Kyle. Kyle's yelling had attracted a lot of attention from people around the parking lot. Although this was a parking lot at the back, there were still some scattered students passing by. After seeing Kyle, the eyes of many young girls began to shine. Harry looked at the group of students speechlessly. Their eyes were filled with love as they surrounded Kyle. His appearance when he saw a celebrity was no different from that of a lunatic. It was very shocking. Harry thought, "This guy is handsome? Have these girls been living under a rock?" His attitude was even worse. He didn't say a single word to anyone, and his attitude was extremely cold and unapproachable. However, what surprised Harry was that not only did those little girls not feel like they were being ignored, but they also became even more agitated. Harry's worldview was shattered. He couldn't understand it. After pondering for a moment, Harry came to a realization. This Kyle was a moron, and he attracted other morons. The fans liked him because he was an idiot. Harry had originally thought that the students at high school could be considered knowledgeable and cultured. They wouldn't be so brainless. Now it seemed that Kyle's halo of stupidity was quite impressive. Thinking of this, Harry silently took a few steps back, afraid that he would be infected by the stupidity as well. The girls were so excited to see Kyle at their school. Kyle still looked up at the sky at 45 degrees and didn't acknowledge the girls. His assistant pointed at Harry and said, "Kyle is trying to get his makeup on and this guy is stopping us." The group of girls immediately became furious and scolded Harry. Where did you come from? Why don't you let Kyle use the van?" Harry was really angry with these girls, but he couldn't scream at them. He said kindly, "It's my van. Why would I let someone else use it?" Kyle's assistant said proudly, "The dressing room in the stadium is not suitable for Kyle. Clearly you're lying and are trying to steal the van so we don't have anywhere else to go." Harry said rudely, "Save it. I'm not stealing anything and you don't need a van like mine to prepare. I've never even heard of someone like Kyle, so who cares if he doesn't perform?" The girls were unhappy. "What are you talking about?" one girl said. "How dare you look down on him? Do you know how hard he worked?" said another girl. Harry chuckled. He was impressed that someone as ugly and stupid as Kyle could attract such loyal and brainless fans. Just as Harry was getting more and more impatient and wanted to forcefully chase them away, Tammy got out of the van. "That's enough. What are you making a fuss about?" A clear shout immediately attracted everyone's attention. "Tammy!" The girls were shocked. "Tammy!" Kyle was also shocked. They didn't expect Tammy to be in the van. Everyone agreed that Tammy was the prettiest girl in the Dream Angel group. She was lively and lovely, but she had a straightforward personality. The group of little girls who were speaking up for Kyle immediately fell silent. As for Kyle, who had been pretending to be a domineering celebrity, he could no longer hold himself back at this moment. "Why did you come out?" Harry said helplessly. In the parking lot, there was more than one girl coming in. There were also quite a few boys who were watching the show. When they saw Tammy walk out of the van, all of their breathing became rapid. Girls liked male celebrities, while boys obviously liked female celebrities. Furthermore, she was the type of young and beautiful female celebrity, and Tammy fulfilled this condition. As the most beautiful and the most lively one in the Dream Angel group, Tammy was undoubtedly the most liked. So when she appeared, the parking lot first became silent, and after a moment there were wild shouts. "Tammy, it's Tammy," the girl said. "No way! Tammy is here. Doesn't that mean that the other Dream Angels have also come?" a tall girl said. All the boys instantly became fanatical. After meeting their idol, they all began to go crazy. "I told you to stay inside. Why don't you listen to me?" Harry was shocked. Tammy was about to be surrounded by people because there were too many fans. The Wolf Guard didn't have enough people, so they couldn't stop them. Harry pushed her back into the van. Then he slammed the door shut, leaving himself standing at the door, blocking the crazy fans. The Wolf Guard could normally hold back this many people, but they were just fans and kids. They couldn't use force to push them back. They had to stay calm. If anyone got hurt, they might get a lot of bad press. Therefore, the Wolf Guard could only raise their hands and form a human wall with their bodies to block the fans. As for Kyle and his group, at this moment, they weren't going to let this commotion go to waste. At this moment, his female fans were all pushed away by Tammy's male fans until they were all gone. Kyle himself was also being pushed around. If it wasn't for the bodyguard forcefully supporting him, he would have been trampled on. Although it was very dangerous, Kyle also had a fanatical look. He looked at the van Tammy was in, and his eyes were fixed on it. Kyle happened to be very infatuated with Tammy. However, he was waiting to become even more famous before he ever talked to her. But today, he met her unexpectedly. Kyle was so excited that he was even more fanatical than the other students. "Don't push. Let me pass first. Let me see Tammy first," Kyle shouted loudly. The boys didn't know or care who Kyle was. When they heard him shout, they didn't take it seriously. Kyle was then pushed to the ground. Before he could stand up, he was continuously stomped on. It was unknown whether it was intentional or not, but several people even tried to step on Kyle's face. In an instant, his delicate face was covered with large shoe prints. "Kyle, it's so dangerous. Hold on, we will save you." The female fans saw that their idol was in danger. The girls' hearts were broken. She could only shout helplessly but couldn't get close enough to help him. On Harry's side, it seemed like the situation was about to go out of control. He quickly ordered the guards to quickly drive the van away. If they continued to stay here, these fans would probably flip the van over. The Wolf Guard carried out the order very thoroughly. The people in front of them blocked the fans, while the others protected the van and quickly drove out of the parking lot. The fans were not willing to give up. There were still a lot of people who slipped through the net and broke through the blockade of the Wolf Guard. They chased after the van. However, Harry didn't have to worry anymore. After all, people couldn't outrun vans. When Tammy and the others drove onto the main road of the school, they came together at the same time. The people behind couldn't keep up with them. The fans finally dispersed the scene in disappointment. Only Kyle, who was covered in dirt, was finally pulled up from the ground. "Oh my God, I was so scared. I almost died." Kyle patted his chest in fear. That pretentious look made Harry feel nauseous. There was no need to stay here any longer. Harry prepared to enter the stadium to find Michaela, but just as he took a step forward, he was stopped by Kyle. "Stop right there. Who told you that you could leave?" Harry looked around in confusion. "Are you talking to me?" Kyle's assistant said proudly. "He is." Harry had enough of these people. He said straightforwardly, "Are you crazy? Get out of my way." "Hey, who do you think you are?" the assistant said angrily. Kyle raised his hand to stop her from continuing, then said to Harry, "You work for Tammy, don't you? You have to give me her number." Harry sneered. "Why? Who do you think you are?" The female assistant wanted to say something, but Kyle stopped her. He continued to say to Harry, "I understand. You want some money. Give me Tammy's contact details. Name your price." Harry chuckled. "You're very rich," Kyle said proudly. "I made 20 million off of my last movie, which is something you'll never make in your whole life." Harry nodded. "All right, then give me 20 million. Once the money is in my account, I'll give you Tammy's contact details." Kyle was dumbfounded. You, he pointed at Harry. He couldn't say anything else. He thought that Harry might ask for an exorbitant price, but he didn't expect Harry to ask for so much. Kyle was willing to pay anything to get Tammy's phone number. There was no amount he would refuse to pay. The only problem was, he had been bluffing. He didn't have $20 million. He had just debuted and was now a contracted artist from an entertainment company. The money earned was less than half of what the payout should have been. He'd signed a contract that gave most of the money back to the company. Harry shook his head. "Don't brag if you don't have the money." Harry's disdainful look made Kyle's hair stand on end. Some of the people around Kyle were angry from embarrassment. They wanted to fight back, but when they saw Harry's tall figure and confident look in his eyes, they couldn't help but feel embarrassed. Kyle suddenly felt that he had become much smaller than Harry. As for the so-called domineering temperament that Kyle pretended to have, was nothing in front of Harry. Kyle's heart became even more weak, and he didn't dare to make a sound. Harry sneered, turned around, and walked into the stadium. The stadium was standard for most cities. The layout inside was similar to that of the Roman Colosseum. The audience stands surrounded the stadium. The center of the stadium below was where the performance would take place. Of course, normally this was the football field, the runway, and various sports facilities. The stadium was the largest investment from the high school. It had once been built with a hefty sum of money. Usually it was not only used for high school alone. If there were any large-scale events in Mountain City, they would have used the school's stadium. However, in recent years, with the establishment of the new city district, there was an updated sports field on that side of town. As for the one in the old district, it was slowly being used less and less. Even so, the scale of this stadium was not small. The entire stadium could accommodate more than 30,000 spectators. After Harry entered, he first saw that a large performance platform had been set up in the center of the stadium. There was also a banner hanging on it which said, "May the students of our school have a smooth college entrance examination." There were many banners with kind words written on them like this. There were also various flower baskets that the old graduates sent over. The entire stage was decorated beautifully. Harry followed the seat number written on the invitation card and walked toward the area that was assigned to him. Because he came in from the parking lot at the back, Harry realized he'd have to walk all the way around. He walked into the parking lot through the passageway, and his seat was on the other side of the stadium. It was still early, so Harry wasn't in a hurry. He just had to walk over at a smooth pace. Anyway, the students had just started to enter the venue. Harry estimated that after he gets to his seat, Michaela should be just on time. When Harry took a detour, Michaela's class had already lined up and walked to the entrance of the stadium. Because most of the students were with their parents, Hannah saw that Michaela was still alone. She asked, "Michaela, where's your brother? Why isn't he here today?" Hannah's parents just happened to see the chaos at the school entrance and had seen Harry for the first time. She then said meaningfully, "He's here. We met at the school's entrance just now." Originally, she wanted to say that she saw Michaela's mother and stepfather, but decided not to mention it. Seeing that Michaela also didn't seem to know, it should be very awkward to say it out loud in the crowd. Michaela said, "I know Harry's here. He said he wants to walk around the school. We'll meet later." Hannah nodded. "Oh, I think you should call him. There are so many people here. Don't want him getting lost." Michaela smiled and said, "My brother is not that stupid. Besides, there are seat numbers on the invitation cards." After saying that, she followed the line and walked in. She was near enough to hear a lot of her classmates gossiping. A girl in Michaela's class said excitedly, "Hey, do you all know that Kyle is also here to perform?" "Ah, is it true? How did you know?" "What are you excited about? I already found out that Kyle was invited by Angel's family," a tall girl said. "Angel? The girl with a lot of money? I heard that her dad is an app developer," said another girl. The girls started to laugh and play around, and their parents, who were next to them, frowned when they heard these nonsensical words. If it wasn't for the fact that there were so many people around, they would have disciplined their own children. They wanted their kids to learn good values, and following celebrities wasn't the way to do it. Hannah and Michaela also heard these conversations. Hannah sighed. "Hey, it's good to be rich. She should enjoy the privileges that come with that." Michaela shook her head and said, "What's there to be envious of? Spending such a high price to invite a celebrity for one night for them to mention your name isn't worth it." "You're one to talk," Hannah said. Michaela nodded. "That's just how it is." Hannah wanted to express her agreement but quickly shook her head. "No, no!" Michaela was puzzled. "What is wrong?" "I couldn't invite anyone to come to perform. Why didn't you pick a celebrity you like to come and give us a show?" Hannah had just reacted and said. Michaela didn't comment. "Why would I want that? I'm too busy studying anyway." "You're boring. Speaking of which, why didn't your brother book anyone to perform? I bet he could get a lot of superstars to come," Hannah said. Michaela smiled and shook her head. "I don't chase celebrities, so I never asked him." Hannah pursed her lips. "You're so rich and yet you're not doing anything with it." Michaela smiled slightly and didn't comment. However, a sarcastic voice came from the side. "You're right. Some people, even if they are rich, don't forget who they are. They know the value of money and never lose sight of that." Michaela followed the voice and saw Angel from the next class. She was the girl from the rich family whom people were talking about. Although her words were clearly mocking Michaela, Michaela didn't want to argue with her, so she quietly turned her head around. Hannah, on the other hand, was unhappy. Her good friend was being ridiculed, and it wasn't her character to swallow her anger. She directly retorted, "Angel, what do you mean by that? You are looking down on us, right?" Angel said matter-of-factly. I'm not looking down on you. I've never noticed you before. Look at you. You're like a toad with bulging eyes. You are as ugly can be. You are so narcissistic all day. How disgusting. After Hannah said that, she pretended to vomit. This time, it poked Angel's ego. She was pretty good everywhere. Her family was rich, and she had been living a luxurious life since she was young. She could get anything she wanted. She never had to deal with people like Hannah. Angel was rich, but she was incredibly ugly. There was nothing she could do about it without major surgery and wearing a face cast for months. She had considered going for plastic surgery several times. Since she was rich, she could find the best plastic surgeon to perform the surgery. However, her family felt that she was still young, so they wouldn't let her. Now that Hannah pointed out her ugly face, Angel became furious. Especially when Hannah said it loudly, it was heard by the surrounding classmates. Although they didn't dare to laugh at Angel openly, they all covered their mouths or turned their faces away. Their shoulders were twitching. Clearly, they were laughing at her. Angel's facial expression fluctuated between shame and anger, wishing she could fight with Hannah. But Hannah was twice her size, so she'd lose that fight. On the other hand, after Angel knew she could probably make fun of Hannah's weight, she laughed mockingly. You talking to me? You look like a fat pig. Hannah immediately felt stifled. Hey! What? Happy to call me ugly but you don't like being called fat? Angel said rudely. The surrounding students started laughing again, this time at Hannah. Hannah was rendered speechless by the scolding and wanted to teach Angel a lesson, but Michaela stopped her. Don't cause a scene. Michaela, I'm defending you, Hannah said, feeling wronged. Angel mocked. And you, Michaela, don't think that you're amazing just because you have a rich brother. Are you just going to let her walk all over you, Michaela? Hannah said unhappily. Michaela said faintly. Angel, I have no grudges against you. Why are you so against me? Angel coldly snorted. I just don't like you. Do I need another reason? Fine, I won't lower myself to your level, Michaela said and pulled Hannah away. Angel looked at Michaela's back with jealousy. Oh, I struck a nerve. The two of them had never interacted before. They had always minded their own business. The reason why Angel wanted to mock and ridicule Michaela today was because recently many of her classmates were comparing the two of them. Michaela had become the daughter of a wealthy family. She was rich now. Angel now had some competition. They were both girls and both of them had money in their families. However, Michaela was beautiful while Angel was ugly. It was a coincidence that they met today. Looking at Michaela's perfect figure and beautiful face, Angel's heart was filled with anger. Under the guidance of the teachers of each class, the students of high school arrived at their respective seats. Some parents chose to sit with their children, but most of them gave the best viewing seats to their children. As for Harry, he went to sit with most of the parents at the back. Today was a performance for the children, and it was something that young people liked. The parents were just there to support their children, so they weren't interested in watching the show. Michaela found her seat and sat down. Next to her was Hannah, and on the other side was Harry's seat. Hannah's parents weren't together, but sat farther back. Coincidentally, Michaela met Angel again, and there was a flight of stairs separating them. When Angel saw Michaela, she coldly snorted and rolled her eyes. Michaela didn't lower herself to Angel's level of pettiness and acted as if she didn't see it. Not long after she sat down, Harry came over. Hannah saw Harry and excitedly stood up to greet him. Harry saw Michaela. He smiled and walked over. Michaela asked, "Where'd you go?" Harry said, "I was just walking around the school." Michaela said, "What's there to see? You come every day to deliver food to me. What else could you want to see?" Harry smiled and said, "I always waited at the school gate. This is the first time I came in. Everywhere I looked, it was refreshing." Hannah pulled Harry and said, "Hey, stop chatting. Hurry up and sit down. Harry, do you want some snacks?" After saying that, she took out a bunch of snacks as if she were presenting a treasure. Harry looked at the dazzling pile and pretended to be surprised. "Did you buy the whole vending machine?" Hannah said angrily. "What? How can it be so exaggerated?" Angel, who was by the side, looked over coldly. When she saw Michaela's big brother's incomparably handsome appearance, she was annoyed that she didn't have such a handsome big brother. She was really angry. She coldly snorted and said sarcastically, "Foodie, glutton." Of course, these words were directed at Hannah. Angel couldn't say anything to Harry or Michaela because they were perfect in every way. Angel could only vent the resentment in her heart on Hannah. Hannah couldn't help but say, "Angel, what is wrong with you? Do you want to fight?" Seeing her friend being mocked repeatedly, no matter how good Michaela's temper was, she couldn't hold it in anymore. she said to Angel. "If you have anything to say, come at me. Don't keep talking about my friend." Harry looked at this girl making a fuss in front of him in surprise and didn't know what to say. The main thing was that he didn't know why she was being so hostile. He didn't know where to start even if he wanted to speak up for his sister's friend. Angel looked at Harry looking at her and felt slightly flustered in her heart. She once again coldly snorted at Michaela and the rest. She sat down again. When Harry looked at her, Angel thought she knew what handsome looked like. She had a crush on Kyle and thought he was the most handsome man in the world. Now that she'd seen Harry, she changed who her crush was. Angel suddenly compared Kyle's heavy makeup and found it revolting. Harry looked incredible and he didn't wear makeup. This simple fact elevated Harry in Angel's mind. In addition, compared to Kyle, Harry was more handsome because he had a manly air about him. At this moment, Angel didn't even look forward to Kyle's appearance today anymore. Now and then, she would secretly look at Harry from time to time. After glancing at him, she quickly shifted her gaze away. Her heart was beating fast. When she calmed down a little, she couldn't help but secretly look at him again. The school anniversary event had begun. The school representative below was talking. The speech was pretty generic, so a lot of people started tuning it out. Thus, as the school representative spoke, the stands were filled with people doing their own things. When the speech was over, the event finally began. The first up was a school group that had prepared for the event. There was some applause, but not everyone was interested in their performance. The students in the stands were really looking forward to the appearance of their favorite idol. Now that Kyle had confirmed his arrival, his fans were all excited. As for the remaining performances, because the school had kept it a secret, the students didn't know who they were either. They could only make wild guesses as to who was performing. The students of the ordinary programs were generally bored, but Harry watched with great interest. In addition to the various snacks that Hannah offered, Harry was enjoying himself. There were so many people watching the performance with his sister. Harry was watching excitedly. Hannah regretted inviting Harry to eat with her. He was eating almost as much as she was, and she hoped he wouldn't eat any. Hannah wanted to cry. "Harry, can you eat slower? Can you save some for me? The real exciting show hasn't even started yet, and you're going to eat it all." Harry looked at the snack bag in his hand, and sure enough, he had already gotten to the bottom of it. "Doesn't matter. I'll go and buy some more," Harry said. Hannah was happy. Okay, I want jerky and milk tea with ice cubes. And," Harry patted Hannah's head, "I'll buy them all for you." "Yeah, thank you, Harry." Hannah happily hugged Harry. Michaela shook her head helplessly. As her best friend, as long as there was food, she would be excited. No matter who gave her food, they were her friends. Of course, in Michaela's heart, her brother Harry was the best person in the world. This was an indisputable fact. Harry got up and went to buy some snacks. Angel, who was watching Hannah hugging Harry, was so angry that her eyes began to burn. "Idiot, why do you get to hug such a handsome man?" Angel muttered to herself, barely a whisper. However, Hannah still heard it, but she didn't hear it all. She only heard the first part. Hannah was so angry that her eyes were bulging. "Angel, do you get joy when you're trying to ruin someone else's day? Do you really think that I wouldn't beat you up?" Hannah waved her fist and threatened. Michaela frowned and looked at Angel with an unfriendly gaze. Michaela, who was usually a good girl in front of Harry, was actually not as weak as she looked. Now that Angel had nothing to do and had spoken rudely several times, Michaela was thinking about whether she should find an excuse to send Harry away after the school anniversary event ended, and then drag Angel to a corner where she could beat her up. Seeing Michaela and Hannah staring at her with unfriendly eyes, Angel's heart felt weak. "What? You want to hit me? Bring it on," Angel said fearlessly. Right now, there were more than 10,000 people sitting on the grandstand. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, Michaela and Hannah naturally wouldn't make a move. Seeing that the two of them didn't speak, Angel was pleased with herself again. "Michaela, don't be complacent. Don't think that you're someone now that you have money," Michaela said lightly. "I'm not looking for your approval." Angel coldly snorted and said, "I think you're not as rich as you say you are. I got Kyle to perform for us, yet you haven't invited anyone. I think you're lying." Michaela still shook her head. "Who is Kyle? I don't know him. Why should I envy you?" Angel gritted her teeth. Not long after Harry came back carrying a large bag of snacks, Hannah didn't bother to vent her anger on Angel. She saw that Harry had bought beef jerky and started to drool. As they were eating, the stadium suddenly erupted with cheers, scaring Hannah. Harry was also shocked. He looked at the crowd's cheering targets and realized that Kyle had appeared on stage. Even though Kyle wasn't a big star, he was still very popular with the students. Most of the allure that Kyle received was due to his team setting up the stage and pyrotechnics. They also worked hard on his social media image where Kyle pretended to be a CEO of a large company. He used this image on and off the stage, acting like he was some wealthy and powerful boss. The entire stadium was filled with screams from the students and parents. The loudest among them were the girls. When they saw their favorite idol come out, they screamed hysterically in excitement. Some of the people not far away from Harry had fainted from excitement. Fortunately, the school had made ample preparations for today's event. There were multiple fire and medical stations set up in case of emergency. The first thing the medical staff did was run over and carry the unconscious people onto a stretcher. Then, they quickly left the stadium, and if their condition was bad enough, they would take them to the hospital for treatment. It's really pathetic how worked up people can get when they see a celebrity, Hannah said in disdain. Harry asked, "Everyone is very excited. Why are you so calm?" Hannah said, "He's not my favorite. I always hated how much makeup he puts on." Harry smiled and said, "Then what do you like?" "Someone like you. You're attractive and carry yourself well. I also like your manliness." Hannah stared at Harry and said, Harry was embarrassed by her praise. He originally wanted to ask her which celebrity she liked. He was hoping she liked one of his employees at Star Moon Entertainment. He could have gotten her some autographs from them for her. After all, she was Michaela's best friend. He had to thank her in some way for always being there for Michaela. "Forget it. Why do they jump for joy when they see Kyle and not me?" Harry teased. He turned his head and looked at Michaela, who had been sitting quietly all this time. Harry smiled in relief. He was happy to see that she wasn't like the other girls. "Is there something on my face?" Michaela asked doubtfully and even subconsciously touched her face. She had been eating snacks just now. Now she thought that something had stuck to her mouth. Harry shook his head. "No, I just want to ask, do you usually not like celebrities or something like that?" Michaela smiled bitterly. "I've never been that interested. Couldn't really afford to go to any concerts even when I wanted to." Harry nodded silently. Nowadays, tickets got really expensive and were hard to get without going through scalpers. Hannah, however, said, "Actually, Michaela almost became a celebrity." Harry was stunned. "What do you mean?" Hannah said, "I remember it was the year before last. Michaela and I were walking on the street when a person suddenly jumped out. He said he was a scout from an entertainment company. He said Michaela's conditions were perfect and he wanted to develop her into a big star." Michaela added, "Yes, that did happen." Harry said, "Then you turned him down." Michaela nodded. "I thought it was a scam." Hannah laughed loudly. Michaela cursed him out. Harry smiled and shook his head. Harry had heard a lot of women getting scammed out of their money because someone said they were a talent scout. Plenty of his employees now had to deal with this kind of scam while they were trying to grow their names. He heard horror stories about how some scummy men used a fake ID to get them to send a check to their company and then never saw them again. Or worse, had to sign a contract with a terrible company that would only give them the scraps from every performance. Every girl dreamed of being a superstar, making millions and never working a day in their life. They'd risk getting scammed if it meant attaining their dreams. However, they didn't understand that celebrities only looked happy on the surface. Once they entered the industry, except for a few people, everyone else was a puppet that was manipulated by others. It was like wearing golden handcuffs. They had more money than they'd ever spend, but little to no freedom. Not everyone could be the top celebrity. There were levels of fame, and most celebrities were at the bottom. In the entertainment circle, there were countless handsome men and beautiful women. Michaela's mother, when she was young, also wanted to be a celebrity to make a name for herself and earn a lot of money and admiration. She had plans to go into modeling when she met Harry's father, and her plans changed completely. Had she raised Michaela and done modeling, her life might have improved, and she could have made a name for herself. Instead, she waited for Harry's father and wasted her time taking care of Michaela and spending all the money Harry's father gave her. She was a unique example because it was her own actions that prevented her from gaining any fame. Harry looked at Michaela's beautiful face and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. If she had actually been scouted and become a celebrity, he feared she'd have been a different person. He didn't know whether she would succeed or not. However, these were all hypothetical things that had already passed. Hannah sighed. "Maybe that guy was a talent scout. You could have been famous." Michaela shook her head and said, "Regardless of whether that scout was real or fake, I don't want to do that kind of work. I'm not looking for fame and attention." Harry agreed. That's admirable. Being in the business has shown me the ugly side of being a celebrity. Nowadays, all the girls wanted to be treated like princesses and held to that standard. The old women envied the younger generations as their fame faded with their age. They always hoped that they could live that kind of life again. They knew how hard it was to become famous. They sacrificed a lot in their lives for fame and money. A lot of celebrities chose to escape through medication and ended up in the hospital from an overdose. Therefore, Harry was glad that his sister hadn't wanted to be a celebrity. With Michaela's appearance, it wouldn't be hard for her to start work as a model. Harry could even get a contract for Michaela if she wished. He'd rather have her working for him where he could guarantee she'd be treated well. Harry didn't want her to be a celebrity, he wanted her to have a nice, honest life. Furthermore, as a member of the Parker family, she had to be a good person. They couldn't have a celebrity throwing the family name around. It wasn't that Harry looked down on celebrities, he just knew that a lot of them were under contract with many powerful people. Anything they said would be underpinned by the idea that someone was paying for their voice. Harry pitied them. Hannah said with pity, "That's true, sometimes it's worth the risk. I thought we looked that guy up and he did turn out to be a real talent scout." Although Michaela rejected the talent scout, she still accepted his business card. She didn't take it because she wanted to have a way to contact him when she went back on her word, but because Michaela had played a trick on him. She felt that this scout was definitely fake, so she needed a way to investigate him, and his business card made it much easier. She thought that if she could get this guy arrested, she could save a bunch of girls from him in the future. But after Michaela and Hannah went online to check, they discovered that this scout was actually real. His name and photo matched as well as his contact information, and the company was original too. Michaela didn't feel any regret, but Hannah felt sad for her. It looked like that company was very impressive. As long as it was an artist who entered this company, they wouldn't be far from becoming famous. Michaela didn't hesitate to give up such an opportunity. She didn't feel that it was a pity, but Hannah felt sad for her best friend. She wanted her friend to grow up to be a big star. Most girls would choose to become a celebrity. Michaela was an exception. Since she was young, she had been poor and mistreated. She lost a lot of self-worth and never aspired to be anything but hardworking. She pictured herself finding a low-paying job and then doing just enough to get by. She had no lofty expectations for her future. Harry looked at his sister with some heartache and asked casually, "Oh right, what's the name of that scout? Which company was he from?" Harry was really just asking casually, but he didn't want to hear a shocking reply. Michaela replied, "It's been too long, I don't even remember." Hannah unexpectedly said, I know, I think his last name was Cross. If I remember correctly, he was looking for talent for the Star Moon Entertainment Company." Harry was stunned on the spot. He never thought that the scouts in his entertainment company would almost poach his sister. Then Harry began to feel conflicted again. If he had known this would happen, perhaps if Michaela agreed, Harry would have met her earlier. But then again, even if Michaela was signed into Star Moon Entertainment at that time, Harry was not aware that she was his younger sister. Seeing that Harry was stunned and didn't say anything, Michaela asked, "What's wrong, Harry? Have you heard any horror stories from that company?" Harry quickly shook his head. "No, nothing." Then what? Michaela only knew that Harry had a lot of businesses, including entertainment companies, but she didn't associate Star Moon Entertainment with Harry. Harry still wanted to keep it secret that he owned the company, so that when the Dream Angel group came on, Michaela would be thoroughly surprised. He could only casually reply, "Ah, I just thought of something else at the last minute." "Oh." Michaela didn't think too much and believed him. The three of them were not interested in Kyle, who was singing and dancing on the stage. They didn't pay much attention to him. Therefore, they only chatted and talked about some things that they were interested in. After Kyle finished performing his own show on stage, he began to encourage the students that had invited him. According to tradition, he prepared a general speech, and then small speeches for the individual students that invited him and would be graduating soon. It was a school event, but the celebrities don't come here for charity. They were all paid to come here. The highest donor would receive the best speech and would be called out by name by the celebrity. Today, I'm very happy to be able to come here. Next, I want to sing a song for a very special person. I wish her well in the coming college entrance exam and to get a good grade. Does everyone want to know who she is?" Kyle said on the stage. The audience was cheering. Everyone knew that this was a program dedicated to someone, so they were very envious. There were even many girls who directly shouted that they didn't want to know. However, they had to thank the girl for inviting Kyle. They got to get a free performance from one of their favorite celebrities. Taking advantage of the audience's fewer cheers, Kyle said, "She is a girl, the most beautiful angel in my heart, and also the princess that I want to protect the most. Her name is Angel." "Of course it's her," Hannah spat. She despised Angel to her core. It wasn't just her looks, but her personality that made Hannah's skin crawl. Someone as rich as Angel could have anything they wanted. They could help a lot of people and not even lose the majority of their wealth. Angel just used it to brag to her friends. She was evil through and through. She loved to pick on all the poor kids by waving her wealth in their faces. Hannah was tired of letting Angel get away with it without speaking her mind first. Kyle had really put in a lot of effort just now. A bunch of flattering words came out of his mouth as if it was free, as if it was to make Angel happy. "If Angel looks like an angel, then I'm beautiful beyond imagination," one girl said. Everyone was teasing Angel and laughing. It seemed that Hannah was not the only one who thought Angel was ugly. You can be nice, but it was different to say things that were objectively untrue. Harry didn't think much of it. He knew the celebrities would say whatever they were asked to say as long as they got paid, even if they were blatant lies. They didn't care as long as they made their sponsors happy, and if the sponsor liked the speech a lot, then they might pay them a bonus. Hannah wasn't convinced and said unhappily, "Must be nice paying someone a lot of money to lie to you." Angel came up to Hannah and looked at her proudly. "Yes, being rich is great. You can do whatever you want," Hannah said angrily. "Looking at you, I don't think I ever want to be rich if you're what I'm supposed to look up to." Angel ignored her and turned to look at Michaela proudly. "Why aren't you saying anything? Why didn't you invite a celebrity?" Michaela said lightly. "Sorry, I'm not interested," Angel sneered. "I don't think you're actually that rich. I had to spend a lot of money on Kyle. I bet you're too poor, aren't you?" Facing Angel's provocation, Michaela didn't want to argue with her at all. Harry had been watching from the sidelines. Regarding the dispute between the three girls, to him, it was just a harmless small matter, and there was no need to get involved. However, he heard Angel ridiculing Michaela. A meaningful smile appeared on Harry's face. He didn't see a need to spoil the surprise. "Angel, don't be too proud of yourself. Kyle is a nobody. If you were really rich, you'd have booked someone more famous." Hannah was very angry. Angel glanced at her and said disdainfully, "I envy your small mind." Hannah was at a loss for words. At this time, Kyle was putting all his effort into singing for Angel on the stage. Angel was very proud and shook her head along with the song for a while. Then she opened her eyes and looked at Michaela and said, "I'm the prettiest girl in school. Everyone wants to be around me and all the girls want to be me. You're nothing compared to me." Michaela had a puzzled expression and didn't understand what Angel meant. Hannah did understand and directly said in disdain, "I never thought I'd actually meet someone that thought the world revolved around them." "Harry, you're just going to let her talk to your sister like that," Hannah said unhappily. Harry shrugged. "Why would I interrupt? I won't interfere with your childish matters." Hannah was angry. "We are not children anymore." Michaela also pouted and looked at Harry. "Harry, I'm almost in college. I'm not a kid anymore." Okay. Calm down and watch the show. Maybe there will be a surprise later." Harry inadvertently gave a hint, but the two didn't understand. Michaela muttered, "What kind of surprise can there be? I'm not interested in celebrities." Harry smiled and shook his head. He couldn't say anything more. Even though Celeste and the others were going to appear soon, Harry still decided to leave the surprise to be revealed at the last moment. After Kyle finished his performance, he said a bunch of words of encouragement and praise to Angel, until everyone was about to throw up. Only then did he leave the stage. This time, there were quite a number of artists who came. Next, there were a few who began their respective performances. However, what was worth mentioning was that compared to the later performances, Kyle's reputation was indeed quite high. This was also the reason why Angel was so proud that she was able to book him. Kyle was the biggest star to perform on the stage so far. The last two final programs were Celeste's and the Dream Angel group. When the host announced the schedule, everyone in the stadium seemed to have stopped breathing. Harry straightened his back and stretched his legs. The boring show had finally come to an end. His surprise guest celebrities were about to come out. He didn't know if Michaela would be happy. She might not be interested. Harry was a little worried that his sister wouldn't like the surprise he had planned for her. The audience was completely stunned. They thought that they had misheard. Celeste and the Dream Angel group, the crowd couldn't believe it. This was just a high school event. They had no idea who could have invited such famous celebrities to perform. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. Kyle was no exception. He had no idea that everyone else was also going to be performing there. But after the host's announcement was confirmed, Kyle was so excited. To be able to perform at the same event as Tammy was a huge benefit. Of course, the rest of the Dream Angel group was here too. It wouldn't make sense if Tammy came to perform solo. Kyle was more excited for Celeste than anything else. No one could have possibly guessed that Mountain City High School would be able to invite such a huge name to perform for their students. Most celebrities had to pick and choose venues depending on their pay rate. They needed to make as much money as they could with the least amount of effort. Even a small celebrity wouldn't be willing to go to some random high school that won't be able to pay them all that well. A lot of Michaela's classmates were praising Angel for inviting Kyle to perform for them. They wanted Angel to know that she was the best person at school. The students didn't think that anyone bigger than Kyle would be coming to perform. After hearing who the next star was, Angel's side became silent. No one dared to even look Angel's way anymore. Angel didn't want to be too awkward and pretended to be calm as she said, "Ah ha 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 ha! We are really too lucky today. It's so nice of the school for inviting such huge stars to perform for us." Angel had no idea who invited Celeste and the Dream Angel group. She knew her family could barely afford to invite Kyle. They would never be able to afford Celeste, or even one of the members of the Dream Angel group. She figured the school was the only suspect who could invite such huge celebrities. Kyle may have had a lot of fans, most of them girls, but Celeste and the Dream Angel group were widely popular throughout the whole country. They were leagues apart in terms of fame. The surrounding students all echoed Angel. "I'm so thankful that the school is so nice to us," said a girl. After that, Angel felt that she had regained some status. A smart person changed the topic and pointed to Michaela and started laughing that she didn't invite anyone to perform. Michaela heard the sarcastic remarks and didn't pay them any attention. She couldn't tune them out even if she wanted to. They were practically screaming at her. But she didn't refute anything and continued to sit quietly in her seat. Harry asked, "Why do you let people talk to you like that? Aren't you angry?" Michaela said indifferently, "What is there to be angry about? They're all just a bunch of lowlifes. They think if they kiss up to Angel, they'll somehow seem cool or get rich." Harry nodded his head in relief and said, "That's right. We don't need to worry about such shallow people like them. They won't be laughing soon enough." "What do you mean?" Michaela didn't understand what Harry meant. Harry smiled mysteriously, indicating for her to continue to watch the performance. When the first group Dream Angels appeared on the stage, the audience erupted into cheers. Dream Angel Group was one of the most popular performers in the country, and even in some parts of the globe. They didn't attract just one type of audience. Young and old people wanted to watch them perform. The students were no exception. Many of the parents that came to the event were also fans. Therefore, when they appeared on stage, the entire audience was in an uproar. Hannah was a huge fan. When she saw her favorite celebrities appear on the stage, her eyes widened. With a face full of disbelief, she covered her mouth with both hands. She cried tears of joy. After a long while, he pulled Michaela's sleeve and said agitatedly, "I can't believe I'm getting to see the Dream Angel group. Look, Michaela, they're really here." "I see them. Don't pull my clothes anymore, you're going to rip them," Michaela said. She wasn't excited to see them on stage. She had no preference for who was performing as long as they performed well. Even if she had spare time to listen to songs and relax, she would listen to all kinds of music. She had no favorite genre or band. "Harry, the Dream Angel group, who invited them?" Hannah pulled on Harry's clothes and shouted, jumping out of joy. Harry smiled and pretended not to know. He shook his head and said, "How would I know? Calm down." He looked at Michaela in the blink of an eye. Regarding his sister's current indifferent behavior, Harry felt that he had made a mistake. He had hoped that Michaela would at least be happy to see Dream Angel, but she didn't seem all that interested. Even though the stage was small, Tammy and the others did their best and performed all their routines. Their fans were jumping out of their seats in joy. A lot of the other performers that were watching backstage felt envious that they didn't put as much effort into their performance as the Dream Angel group. They had the same amount of stage and effects to work with, but they weren't nearly as energetic. Tammy and the others had performed on small stages like this. They knew what to do. They had special dance moves and choreography that they had practiced that would look good and leave them plenty of room on the stage. The cheers in the stadium formed a huge sound wave that rushed forward like a tsunami. Under everyone's reluctant gazes, the Dream Angel group finally finished the performance they had prepared. Next was the segment of cheering on the students. Everyone was looking forward to it, waiting to hear the kind of speech they'd prepared. The students were whispering to each other, trying to figure out who had invited the Dream Angel group to perform at their high school. Tammy, Jessica, and the rest on the stage first followed the script that they had prepared beforehand and did their best to inspire the students. Then the main part of the speech came. Tammy's clear voice spread throughout the entire audience. "Michaela, I heard that you're going to choose a university in Florida. We look forward to seeing you there." The whole stadium exploded with noise. Everyone followed the direction Tammy was pointing at and couldn't help but stand up and turn their heads to look. All of their eyes were looking at Michaela. Hannah was really shocked to the point that she kept on staring. She never would have thought that they'd actually call out Michaela by name. "Oh my God, Michaela, they said your name," Hannah said in shock. All the students were gossiping. Michaela was considered the most beautiful girl in school, and most of the students knew her. They were excited to hear that one of their favorite pop groups had named Michaela in their speech. Among everyone, the one who was the most shocked was Angel. Just now, she was ridiculing Michaela. She had just been showing off that her family could afford to invite Kyle to perform for this event. But Michaela was somehow able to get the Dream Angel group to perform for their school event, and they even said her name. Angel had lost all the vitriol that she had held in her heart for Michaela. She felt utterly defeated. The people who were trying to be friendly with Angel quietly distanced themselves from her. Hannah was very pleased with herself this time. She looked at Angel with a face full of pride and ridicule. "Care to brag now, Angel?" Angel was a little confused at this moment. She didn't understand how Michaela's family was so rich. It didn't make sense when she thought about it. She thought to herself, there's no way that the Dream Angel group would come to their school even if someone invited them. Angel couldn't understand, but Michaela understood. Combined with the fact that Harry had been acting suspiciously for the past few days, it seemed like he was doing something behind her back. And today, he even said that he would give her a surprise. This was the surprise that Harry was talking about. Although she wasn't passionate about chasing stars, she usually didn't want to see people in concert. However, in her heart, Michaela was envious of those classmates who were called out by the celebrities. Being able to receive individual encouragement in front of the entire school was a very enviable thing. But now, she doesn't have to envy others anymore. Instead, everyone started to envy her. Because her brother had invited the biggest pop group in the country, Michaela was instantly moved. At this moment, even when facing the attention of the entire school, she still threw herself into Harry's arms without hesitation. "Thank you, Harry. I'm so grateful to have such a wonderful brother like you." Harry smiled and patted her back. "I was afraid you wouldn't like my surprise." "How could I not like it? I feel so happy that I'm about to explode." Michaela looked at Harry with admiration. Harry shook his head. "Don't get too excited. It is not over yet." "It's not over yet?" Michaela asked in surprise. Under the reluctant call of the audience, the Dream Angel group got off the stage. And following that, the students couldn't believe their eyes. International superstar Celeste came on stage. After a moment of silence, a deafening cheer erupted. Even the teachers in the school, as well as many parents, were standing up and cheering. All of them stood up and passionately shouted Celeste's name. After Celeste raised her hand and dropped it, the entire audience instantly became silent. This was the ability of superstars to rule the stage. Every move they made was like a storm. Even Harry was shocked that his artist had such a high ability to control the stage. Although Celeste spent most of her time filming and making movies, she accepted the job to come on stage. Most of the works under her name were also film and television, but this didn't mean that she didn't know how to sing and dance. Most people knew Celeste had started her acting career with her singing. At this time on the school stage, Celeste sang her most popular song. The beautiful singing and the pleasant music perfectly intertwined, making everyone listen intently. After the song ended, everyone was still immersed in her soft voice, which was the most beautiful voice they had ever heard. It was only when Celeste began to speak and encourage all the students that the highlight came again. The appearance of the Dream Angel group just now was already very shocking. They didn't expect that there would be an even more popular celebrity today. They didn't know who had invited Celeste. When Celeste pointed in Michaela's direction and called out her name, the entire audience burst into an inconceivable uproar once again. None of them could believe that Michaela could get not one but two of the most popular people in the world to call her out by her name. The entire student body was gossiping and talking to each other while Celeste gave her speech. They all wanted to know why and how Michaela was able to get the attention of these celebrities. The boys in the school all hoped to be Michaela's boyfriend one day. Hannah was about to go crazy. She didn't expect that after the dream angel went on, Celeste would be the next to perform. Moreover, all of them came for her best friend Michaela. This made people envious and jealous. No one in all the past events had more than one celebrity call them out by their name. Michaela, I wish I was you. Hannah was extremely envious. Michaela was very touched. She looked at Harry with tears flowing down her face. She had never thought that this day would come. Harry touched the back of his sister's head. No need to be excited. There'll be plenty more of this in the future. Michaela nodded heavily. I'm just happy to have such a wonderful brother. Harry laughed loudly. Angel, who was sitting nearby, had a pale face. She was completely outmatched by Michaela. Being able to invite the Dream Angel group was already shocking enough. Even superstar Celeste was invited. This was no longer a matter of money. Michaela had more influence and power than Angel could ever hope to have. Angel knew that her family wouldn't even hear back from Celeste or the Dream Angel group if they had invited them to perform at the high school. The Mountain City High School's event this year ended in a spectacular way. All the students and parents had been filming the stage, making videos on the internet go viral. Michaela's popularity was also rising. She was becoming a famous figure in the school. Everyone was trying to be friends with Michaela, but after the school event ended, Michaela no longer showed up at school. There was still a month left until the college entrance exam. At this time, the school no longer required students to study in the school. They did allow the students that wanted to study at school to do so. Most of the students who had good grades took this opportunity to rest and study a little for the exam. Michaela explained the weird schedule change to Harry, and he didn't mind. He knew the exam was important, and he didn't want Michaela to be overstressed. Harry knew the stress he always faced when he took his exams. If Michaela studied well, she'd have no problem taking the exam. Harry was afraid that she'd be too nervous when the time came. Harry was only worried that Michaela would get sick because she was too nervous. A month's time quickly passed, and the college entrance exam also began. Michaela was rather lucky. Her high school got permission to use one of the newer school's rooms to hold their exam. Every classroom had an air conditioner which kept the room cool in the heat of the day. It was not like the old city where the students had to use handheld fans to take the exam. Many students couldn't stand the heat. Harry waited outside the school while Michaela took the exam. Harry had been trying to keep her as calm as possible. Michaela chuckled. You can stop telling me, I heard it the first 20 times. Harry scratched his head. Really? Then it seems that I'm more nervous than you are. The two siblings laughed together. Michaela had been taken care of by Harry very carefully during this period of time. She didn't feel very nervous about the examination that was about to begin. Unlike other students, many people couldn't hide the anxiety on their faces. As for Hannah, who was in the same room as Michaela, she had a relaxed expression. Hannah knew that she was probably going to fail, but it didn't matter. She just needed to take the exam, then all the anxiety would go away. Michaela waved goodbye to Harry and said to wish her luck. Harry said, I'm sure you'll do great, but I wish you luck. Michaela and Hannah held hands, smiled at Harry, and walked into the examination room together. Hannah's parents also followed. At this time, their faces were full of worry as they looked at their child's back. Their faces were a little lonely. Hannah usually doesn't study well. This time, she definitely won't be able to get into a good university. Harry smiled and greeted, It's too hot outside. Come and sit in the car. It's all right, we're happy to stand here. I insist. Anyway, the car is spacious, come on. Harry still invited them warmly. In the end, they sat in Harry's car. After carefully sitting in the car and seeing that Harry didn't care about whether they were wearing good clothes or not, they heaved a sigh of relief. Harry sized up Hannah's parents a few times. Seeing that both of them were honest, he had an idea in his heart. Michaela only had Hannah as a friend. Now that the college entrance exam was over, they'd be away from each other for the very first time. Harry could tell that his sister was very reluctant to leave her best friend. Furthermore, Florida, for his sister, that place was, after all, an unfamiliar place. If there was a familiar person coming with her, her mood would be better, and she would be able to adapt to the new environment faster. Although Florida was Harry's home, Harry couldn't come with his sister to school. Therefore, this time Harry decided to bring Hannah to Florida as well, and make her study at the same university as his sister. Thinking of this, he said to the old couple, You don't have to worry too much about the exam. When Hannah's parents heard this, they sighed and said, Why shouldn't we be worried? Hannah hasn't studied. I think this exam is just a formality. After the exam, she'll be stuck at some dead-end job. Harry smiled and said, That's not the worst outcome. Harry shook his head and said, I have an idea. I don't know if you're willing to accept it. What's the idea? You know I can get your daughter into the same school as Michaela, regardless of her grades, Harry said. Harry was halfway through his sentence when Hannah's father came to a realization. He suddenly looked up and said in surprise, You can do that? Harry nodded. Yes, I want your daughter to go to the same university as my sister. Hannah's parents almost thought that they were hallucinating, although it was a pleasant surprise. Out of the cautiousness of the small townsfolk, they still asked worriedly, Will there be any problems? After all, this is... Harry raised his hand and said, Don't worry, there will definitely be no problems at all. My sister wants to apply to Florida Oceanside University, and I've already sponsored the school, so the school will return the favor. According to the rules, they'll give me a few admission slots. This kind of thing was very common in upper-class society. Hannah's parents looked at Harry in surprise. Then how much do we owe you? Harry smiled. I don't need you to fork out a single cent. I'll pay for her tuition as well. That's why you don't have to worry. Hannah's mother was still a little worried. This is such a big matter. We can't make a decision now. Can you give us some time to think about it? Hannah's mother had figured that Harry wanted something else for payment, but she didn't know what Harry could want from them. Harry gave her such a big surprise all of a sudden, and she didn't dare to accept it. Harry smiled and nodded. It's my duty. You guys rest in the car. I'll go out for a walk. After saying that, he pushed open the door and left the car. He gave the two of them some private space to discuss. It wasn't that Harry forced them to make a decision right now. It was just that when this kind of thing was said, it was inevitable that their hearts would surge. Therefore, Harry went to a nearby cafe and ordered an iced coffee and sat down to drink it. In the car, Hannah's parents started to discuss in a panic after Harry left. Why do I feel uncertain about what Harry just said? Do you think it's true? Hannah's father stared at her. Harry is a rich man. Are you afraid that he will lie to us? Not really, she said. That's right. I think it's a rare opportunity for Hannah, he said. But isn't this wrong? Once it's found out that Hannah got admission only because of the influence, what should we do then? She said. Hannah's father said, This is because you have no experience. A few years ago, the big boss of real estate donated a few $1,000,000 to Harvard University. Why? It was just so their kid would be accepted. Hannah's mother was surprised. They'd do that? What do you know? Does a rich man care about a few million? He said. That's true. Then what do you think? She said. I think it's pretty good. Michaela and our Hannah grew up together. In the future, going to the same university would be quite good. Then should we agree to take his offer? Yes, you must agree, Hannah's father said firmly. Harry was happy to spend some money to guarantee his sister gets into the university near Harry's manor. It didn't change much when he also wanted Hannah to go with Michaela. Michaela finished her exams with ease. Next, she rested for a few days and returned to the school to check her scores. Then she started to fill in the application form for the university. Michaela already had an idea of which school she wanted to go to after Harry's suggestion. She wanted to go to Florida's Oceanside University to study marine biology. Because of the opportunity that Harry sent over, Hannah also applied to the same school as Michaela at the suggestion of her parents. After knowing that it was Harry who handled all of this, Hannah was extremely happy. After all, being able to study at a proper university was much better than going to a famous specialized school. Michaela was also grateful that Harry could let Hannah study in a university with her. After the results were out, Michaela scored an average of 100 points higher than her peers. Even without Harry opening the back door, she could still go to any university she wants. Hannah, on the other hand, needed the opportunity given to her by Harry and successfully got the acceptance letter from Oceanside University. When the notice was sent, the entire class was in an uproar. Everyone knew that Michaela's grades were good, so it was not strange at all for her to get into her choice of university. But Hannah, who was at the end of the line, was actually able to get an acceptance letter. This made people shocked and puzzled. Hannah was too lazy to explain how she was able to get into the same university as Michaela. Some people thought she might have cheated, though she only was given a free acceptance because of Harry's generous donation. Harry planned to take Michaela back to his Florida home, but before he left, Michaela still had to attend a graduation party for her class. Although she wasn't friends with any of them, she didn't hate them. She had no other friends except Hannah. But at least they were classmates. and there was also the teacher who participated. Harry brought his sister and bought some gifts for her to thank the teachers. He saw this as proper etiquette. After tidying up the things he needed to bring along, Harry brought his sister and set off on the journey back to Florida. Harry's private jet rose from the airport, and Michaela was about to start a new life. After Harry returned to Florida, he would officially start his long-planned high-tech industry. When Harry's plane landed on his private island, above the Allen Island, the entire island was decorated with lanterns and streamers. Almost all of Harry's subordinates were present to welcome Michaela, the daughter of a rich family. She was Harry's biological sister, and also the heiress of the Parker family. Of course, her status was incomparably noble. Although Harry didn't want his sister to have too many connections with his family, his subordinates didn't care about the relationship between them. Harry's subordinates had set up a grand acceptance for their arrival on the island. In order to welcome Michaela, except for the employees who couldn't stop what they were doing, almost everyone else had come. When Michaela got off the plane, she saw a sea of people at the airport. The sound of cannons firing and the smell of fresh flowers falling from the sky, the red carpet extended from the air stair all the way to the end of her line of sight. Everyone cheered loudly for Michaela's arrival. Michaela was shocked by the scene in front of her. She turned to Harry and asked, "Is this your home? Why are there so many people here?" Harry smiled and pointed out the mistake in her words. "It's not my home, but our home. This will be your new home from now on. As for these people who are welcoming you," he looked at the crowd around him. Harry smiled at the crowd and continued, "They are indeed my employees, but most of them live on other islands. Today, they gathered here to welcome you. This is too much. There is no need to go through all this trouble," Michaela said, being a little uncomfortable. Michaela had never been welcomed by anyone before, let alone an entire airstrip full of people. She kind of felt like royalty. Although there were more people attending the school event at Mountain City High School than now, but at that time, Michaela wasn't on stage. And now, under the welcoming eyes of over 10,000 people, Michaela was the main focus. Facing so many gazes, Michaela was shy. Harry also didn't want to make his sister feel uncomfortable. After all, she was coming home. If she still felt restrained at home, Michaela wouldn't feel like she had a new family. However, as Harry's younger sister, she couldn't be too petty. In the future, regardless of whether she was willing or not, she would encounter many such situations. Therefore, Harry could only comfort her. "Just bear with me a little. After all, everyone is here to welcome you. You can relax when you return to the manor." Michaela was very obedient. Her brother's subordinates were all happily welcoming her. If she still treated them badly, it wouldn't only be a loss of face for her, but also a loss of face for her brother. Thinking of this, Michaela calmed her heart and grabbed Harry's arm to strengthen her courage. Then she raised her head and faced everyone with a smile. Michaela's face was red as she listened to the praises from the people around her. Then she sat in the car as the crowd waved at her. In the car, Harry said to her, "I know you aren't used to this kind of things, but today is the first time you've come home. No matter what, I have to let everyone meet you and get to know you." "Yes, I understand, but I didn't think there would be so many people." Michaela quietly let out a sigh of relief. Sitting in the car, she looked at the endless crowd on both sides. Michaela felt smothered. "After all, you're my sister. From now on, you will live here. It's very inconvenient if no one knows you," Harry explained. The car drove along the small path on the island. After Michaela calmed down a little, she began to carefully observe the scenery on the island. Just by looking out the window, Michaela was shocked. Allen Island was a private territory that Harry had spent a lot of effort to build. Almost every place here was extraordinary. During the journey from the airport to the manor, Michaela felt as if she had broken away from reality and entered a dream-like island. When she was young, she'd only seen places like this in movies. Harry's island was even more beautiful than anything she'd ever seen. It wasn't even possible to show the intricacies in the movie, but Michaela was now experiencing it in real life. Looking at the exquisite scenery on both sides of the road, Michaela was intoxicated. However, this wasn't the most shocking part. When she arrived at the manor and got out of the car, she saw Harry's castle carved out of jade. Michaela once again opened her mouth wide. She knew that her brother was rich, but she didn't expect him to be this rich. The magnificent castle in front of her was simply like a painting. She couldn't believe that anyone lived here. It looked like only heaven had such perfect and exquisite features. The air was moist and refreshing. Before Michaela came, it had just rained here, and the island was filled with the sweet smell of soil and grass. The moment Michaela arrived at the manor, the clouds in the sky dispersed a little, and sunlight shot down through the gaps. It formed beams of light that shone on the manor. The reflection of the exterior of the manor's jade stone formed a circle of gorgeous halos, making people feel like they were in the Garden of Eden. This is too beautiful. Harry, is this really where we are going to live? Michaela said in disbelief. Harry looked at her dotingly and said, "Yes, it's not a dream." Outside the manor, Harry's subordinates were welcoming them home. Inside the manor, the people waiting for Michaela were Harry's friends and classmates. They were all very close friends. After hearing that Harry had found his sister and that he would bring her back today, they all gathered together to welcome them. When Michaela stepped into the house, everyone's eyes were wide open. They were amazed by Michaela's perfect appearance and natural noble temperament. "Michaela, introduce yourself and get to know everyone," Harry greeted. She generously greeted everyone. "Hello everyone, I'm Michaela Parker. Nice to meet you all for the first time. I hope we can all be friends." Harry raised his eyebrows. His sister had introduced herself with his last name instead of her own. Speaking of which, now that she'd returned to her real home, it was time for her to use her original surname. After a long round of warm applause, everyone welcomed Michaela to her new home. It would give people a kind of inexplicable favorable impression. When appropriate words were said, it would make people feel like they were bathing in a spring breeze. Therefore, the people who welcomed her here immediately marked Michaela in their hearts. This was Harry's younger sister, the daughter of a rich family. Not only was she extremely beautiful, but she was also very gentle and lovable. If one were to say that Michaela was not very beautiful, but an extremely ugly person, perhaps everyone wouldn't say anything on the surface for Harry's sake. However, they were thinking that this girl definitely didn't deserve to be called Harry's younger sister. Fortunately, Michaela looked a lot like Harry, so everyone knew it made everyone who saw her for the first time like her. As the main character, Michaela was present. Next would be the grand banquet for her. It was not the first time Harry held a grand banquet in his manor. The servants were very experienced. They didn't need to spend too much effort to arrange the banquet in an orderly manner. After Michaela and everyone got to know each other and exchanged greetings, she was pulled aside by a group of female artists from Star Moon Entertainment and started to talk about all the topics that the girls were interested in. These female artists also had their own motives. As Harry's employees, they usually wanted to please the boss, but they couldn't bother Harry. But now that they had his sister, it was easier to talk to her. If they could become friends with Michaela, or even become close friends with her, then they would have a bright future ahead of them. Harry saw his sister being surrounded by a group of girls, and Michaela was at a loss again. He shook his head and didn't pay any more attention to her. After all, Michaela had to learn to grow. Although this kind of banquet was a bit boring, learning how to be a person was also a very good learning experience. Harry was currently sitting together with his best friend and chatting. Randy looked at Michaela and his eyes lit up. He asked excitedly, "Harry, that really is your sister. She is so beautiful." Harry said naturally, "Of course she is." Randy clicked his tongue. Harry immediately scolded, "Watch it, you have a girlfriend." Randy refused to accept it. He said angrily, "Harry, you can't be so mean." Harry was instantly speechless. After pausing for a while, he finally flew into a rage out of humiliation. "Just back off, mutt." Randy was angered by Harry's scolding, but Barry and Felton became spirited. He smiled obsequiously and went up to Harry. "Calm down, he's just kidding. Randy does have a girlfriend. If anyone has a shot, it's me because I'm single." Harry looked at the two of his friends with a faint smile. The two of them were scared. Harry picked up his fork and poked them hard with it. He yelled at them to leave. Harry knew his friends were just kidding, but he wouldn't tolerate that kind of joke around his sister. It would be strange if Michaela would take a liking to such a man who likes to show off. Harry looked at Randy once again. He said with a sneer on his face, "What about you? Do you still want to joke around?" Randy immediately admitted defeat. "No, I'm good." Michaela saw the situation on Harry's side and walked over with some doubt. "What happened?" "It's nothing, just my friends being annoying," Harry said casually. Michaela was smart. She knew what was going on just by looking at it. Looking at the few people who were chased away by Harry, she covered her mouth and laughed. Harry said earnestly, "Michaela, it's not that I care too much. You are about to become an adult. It is normal for you to talk about love, but..." Michaela blushed. Harry said, I'm not your boss, but you need to know that some men will try and manipulate you. I'm worried that when you go off to college, something might happen to you. Michaela's face was so red that it seemed like water was about to pour out of it. You're so worried about me. I'm not stupid. I never said you were, but better to be prepared for anything, Harry said. Harry was the only family alive that cared about Michaela. He had to make sure she was prepared for the outside world. Michaela was about to become an adult. Next, she would go to university to study. I just know how boys think, and they're going to see a beautiful and rich woman like you, and they'll do all sorts of crazy things. I can't always be there to protect you, so I just need to make sure you're going to be okay. Harry figured he'd save himself a lot of trouble if Michaela knew how manipulative people could be. Michaela understood Harry's painstaking effort and nodded. Harry, I understand what you mean. I'll be careful in the future. Good. Let's get back to the party, Harry said with a smile. The grand banquet in the manor lasted until midnight. Michaela had been the center of attention for the whole banquet. She was exhausted. One of the maids had directed Michaela to her room. She was shocked at what she was seeing. Harry had spent a lot of effort building a room for his sister. When they were in the mountain city, he had already started preparing. Harry got a call 2 days before they left that the maids had finished Michaela's room. The room had been completely remodeled, and for all intents and purposes wasn't just a room anymore. They'd renovated a portion of the manor to be used like an in-law suite. The interior had a garden that was built indoors. The flowers bloomed with green grass, and the roof had been replaced with a massive skylight. The vast starry sky could be seen in a panoramic view. Surrounding the garden were many independent rooms. There were all kinds of entertainment rooms and gyms, as well as guest rooms and study rooms. The master bedroom was decorated like one of the old Russian princesses' rooms. Although most of the rooms had 2 doors in case the maids needed to clean, as the second owner of this place, Harry was still considerate enough to create a private space for his sister. Michaela looked at everything and couldn't help but feel touched by her brother's care. Michaela had everything. She felt so relieved that she laid down to close her eyes and fell into a deep sleep. When she woke up the next day, she felt the gentle sunlight in the room, as well as the birds singing and the fragrance of flowers outside. She smiled happily. Miss, you're awake. Mr. Parker is waiting for you in the kitchen. Please wash up and go over. When the maids saw Michaela walk out of the bedroom, they offered their services. Michaela was not used to being taken care of so meticulously. She waved her hand and said, No need, I can do it myself. After washing up, the maid followed her into her massive closet. Michaela was in awe that all the clothes were hers. She couldn't pick what she wanted to wear. The maid suggested a few outfits to narrow down Michaela's choices. When Michaela was dressed, she walked down the stairs to the kitchen. All the maids' mouths were agape as they saw Michaela coming down the stairs. She walked towards the sunlight, making her skin shine with a soft luster. Even Harry was lost in thought for a moment. He didn't expect his sister to be so radiant. Is something wrong? Why are all of you looking at me? Michaela still didn't feel the huge change in her body. Harry smiled and stood up to hold her hand. No, sorry, you just look beautiful. Michaela said happily. Thank you, but surely June deserves the compliments. Come get your breakfast, Harry called out to Michaela. Michaela had never seen such a nice breakfast before. Half were the dishes that she'd never even seen before. Michaela only had off-brand cereal and never had much time to enjoy it. Over time, she developed a bad habit of not having an appetite in the morning. Michaela had never wanted to eat more than right now. Come, try this, Harry called out. Michaela took the fork that the maid handed over and carefully put a small bite into her mouth. Immediately, her eyes widened. How is it? Harry asked. Michaela gave him a thumbs up. It's delicious. How did you make this? She grabbed the plate and ate the rest of the dish. After having a delicious breakfast, Harry brought Michaela out of the manor and took a walk on the island to digest their food. Harry didn't want Michaela to be lost in her own home, so he thought he'd show her around. Michaela was also excitedly observing the exquisite features of the island. At night, the plants on Allen Island would glow a soft blue. During the day, it was like a paradise. Michaela had never seen so many beautiful plants. Harry, these little animals are so cute. What kind of animals are these? I've never seen them before, Michaela said in surprise. Harry smiled and explained. A lot of them are modified to live on the island. I had to adjust the ecology of the island because of all the work we've had to do here. Harry had noticed that some plants were overgrowing others, and some larger animals were starting to overfeed. While Harry had a team working on the issue, Celeste thought about some of the smaller animal breeds, like corgis or pugs, bred to look a certain way that people found to be rather cute. Harry thought that it would be a great idea to somehow combine that idea with the preservation of the island. Coincidentally, the smaller bodies, bigger heads, and shorter legs proved to be advantageous on the small island. As Michaela was trying to look at the rest of the small animal at her feet, its ears became alert. The forest fell into silence. In an instant, all the little critters ran away. Michaela looked at Harry in fear. Her face was full of doubt. Harry sighed helplessly and hugged Michaela. "Don't be afraid. You're in no danger. Something big lives on this island, but he won't hurt you." Before Michaela could ask, the white orangutan called Macaroni jumped out from the forest. Michaela was paralyzed by fear at the sight of the huge furry figure. At this moment, Michaela was so scared that she forgot to breathe. "Little guy, don't scare people. This is my little sister. In the future, we have to spend more time with her, okay?" Harry said with a smile. The white orangutan was panting, and its eyes were rolling around. When he heard Harry's words, he turned his head and looked at Michaela. His eyes were filled with curiosity. He didn't quite understand what Harry was saying. He looked at Michaela, who was trembling a little. Harry comforted her. "Don't be afraid. This guy is actually quite fun. He just likes to joke around with people. You'll get used to it." Michaela would never have thought that there was such a huge orangutan in the world. With a trembling voice, she said to Harry, "Are you sure he won't bite me?" Harry said, "Of course not. He's mostly a vegetarian. He rarely eats meat." Michaela almost cried out, "Even if it's very little, he still eats meat." Harry immediately became speechless. He thought to himself that his explanation was really useless. He simply took action and scolded Macaroni. Harry said angrily, "Get down quickly. If you scare my sister again in the future, I'll make sure you don't eat for 3 days." Macaroni groaned a few times and obediently crawled down. Harry brought Michaela forward and said, "Come, sit on his shoulder. Let's ride him for a bit." Michaela was surprised and asked, "Is this okay?" "Of course, I'll sit beside you. I won't let you fall off," Harry said. Michaela thought quietly. She thought that sitting on Macaroni would just make it easier for him to eat her. However, she saw that Macaroni was very obedient, and Harry was already standing on his shoulder. Michaela's courage also increased, and she slowly sat down like Harry. Then, under Harry's instructions, Macaroni suddenly stood up, and then happily ran through the forest. Michaela was so scared that she screamed and subconsciously closed her eyes. "Don't be afraid. Open your eyes and take a look." Harry encouraged her from the side. Michaela took a few deep breaths, lifted her head, and slowly opened her eyes. Then she couldn't help but let out a cry. The two of them were currently riding on Macaroni's shoulders, while Macaroni was jumping back and forth in the forest. It was like flying in a green ocean. Michaela felt exhilarated. "More fun than a roller coaster?" Harry asked with a smile. "A roller coaster is not as fun as this," Michaela answered loudly. Their laughter and Macaroni's excited roar echoed in the forest. Once they were done playing with Macaroni, Harry took Michaela over to the business island. He showed her around the buildings and the new sections they were building. Then they went to the industrial island to watch the super factory and the high-tech production line. He even showed her all the high-tech equipment his company was developing. Michaela saw everything and finally understood how wealthy her brother really was. She also figured out why Harry wanted her to go to university in Florida. He lived right off the coast and had a vested interest in the area. It also meant that if she was ever homesick, she was a short helicopter or boat ride away. With Harry's presence in Florida, even if Michaela ran into trouble in school, he could solve it for her as soon as possible. This seemed unlikely to happen. Harry had thought about the dangers of bringing Michaela home. Since he had been in the state, multiple families had tried to steal from him, even kill him. Once they were dealt with, no one else dared to go against Harry in his own territory. Midway through Michaela's summer vacation, Nate called. He informed Harry that the Parker family had heard the news about Michaela. He asked Harry to bring Michaela to the main Parker family so they can arrange a marriage for her. He thought that Nate was joking with him. Harry hadn't said anything to the family about Michaela. He figured that the family had used their connections and found out about Michaela. They also had to have been keeping tabs on him and his desire to take Michaela back to his island. Of course, these spies wouldn't have any hostility towards Harry, but Harry's every move would be secretly relayed to his family. After Nate called Harry and told him about the family's intention, Harry decided to ignore it. Since his sister was with him, the family would have to come in person if they wanted to discuss anything. Nate ended the call and arrived at Allen Island shortly after. This was the first time he saw Nate since he left Maryland. After arriving at Harry's manor, Nate praised the territory that Harry had built. However, the two of them quickly got down to business. Harry, the family council is extremely interested in Michaela. They have requested that you take her to them, Nate said. Harry sat on his seat and said indifferently, "She's my sister. She doesn't go anywhere without my say-so, especially not to the family council." Nate said with a bitter face, "Harry, they said it wasn't up for negotiation. She's coming back with me." Harry's face turned ugly. "Nate, are you with me or against me?" Harry obviously wouldn't listen to the council on this matter. As for Nate's interrogation, it was also very serious. Nate had been a part of Harry's family since before he was born. He trusted Nate with everything, and hearing him side with the family stung. Nate was shocked. He quickly bowed and said respectfully, "Harry, I've always been loyal to you. I'd never betray you, you know that." Harry didn't say anything. He just stared at Nate as if he wanted to see through what Nate was thinking. Nate began to sweat. After a while, Harry said faintly, "All right, get up." Nate got up and took out a handkerchief to wipe his sweat. "Nate, I have no other intentions. I just want to make it clear to you. Although I'm also a part of the Parker family and I can do my duty to my family, beyond that is where I draw the line." Harry's attitude was very firm. In his opinion, the decision of the family council this time was clearly unreasonable. His sister had just graduated from high school and still wasn't an adult. He promised he'd never let someone else arrange her own marriage ever again. After Nate faced the pressure from Harry, he suddenly smiled in relief. "Nate, what are you laughing at?" Harry asked. Nate smiled. "You've grown up so much. It's hard to think I held you in my arms at one point." Nate had watched Harry grow up. After Harry's parents passed away, Harry was a direct descendant of the Parker family. He was put through the trials to make sure he'd be ready if and when he had to fight for the seat of the family. This kind of thing would never happen if Harry's father was still alive. The position of head of the family lay vacant, and there were multiple heirs that could assume power. In the meantime, a lot of the more powerful arms of the family grouped together to run the family business while the next leader was decided. The distribution of power also caused a lot of disputes over many things. Several forces were fighting for their own interests. The orders they issued were either not carried out or absurd and unrealistic. After Harry's parents passed away, Harry was still young and couldn't control the resources of his father's group. Nate was just a housekeeper. He couldn't stop all of this. He could only watch helplessly as the forces left by Harry's father were divided up, and Harry was left to live on his own. Harry had never considered the bigger picture when he was put into the trials. The groups in the family believed they would eliminate him as an heir before he came of age. Nate had known that there were plans to kill Harry. He used the funds he'd saved from his brother's account and used it to protect Harry till he was old enough to own his father's assets. This was also the reason why Harry was grateful to Nate when he grew up. If it wasn't for his loyalty, Harry would have given up a long time ago. Harry sighed. "Nate," he said, "I acted irrationally. Don't take it to heart." "I understand. Actually, I have refuted this matter in the family council, but you also know that I'm just a butler, so I don't have a lot of sway in the family matters." Nate smiled bitterly. "Why are they targeting Michaela?" Harry asked. Nate explained, "This is a little complicated." He explained everything to Harry from beginning to end. Speaking of which, Harry still felt lucky to have kept Nate in the family. With Nate as Harry's spy, Harry wouldn't be blind to anything that happened in the family. After listening to Nate's story, Harry found out that he had been away from the family for many years. The family wasn't peaceful either. In fact, the family's board of directors fought more and more openly. The consequences were slowly becoming more and more severe. As the most powerful family in the world, the Parker family had an unimaginable amount of wealth and power. That power could be easily abused and used to destroy the entire family if mishandled long enough. A man's life is full of ups and downs, and a country could also go from dejection to prosperity, and then gradually from prosperity to decline. This was an unchanging rule. As a family that stood at the top of the world, the Parker family had been powerful for a long time. Now, as the family council replaced the leader to exercise power in the family, the power was divided. It was bound to intensify the internal conflicts. Thus, from the top to the bottom, Chaos gradually spread to every corner of the Parker family. When Harry was undergoing his training, there were still no major conflicts within the family council for the time being. Because the few major powers were busy dividing the resources left by Harry's father, they didn't have the time to fight with each other. But after dividing the resources, they won it. Everyone wanted to monopolize the power and become the person in charge of the Parker family. They could only fight over various minor issues. As a result, the Parker family had lost a powerful upper class, and their power had become scattered. The middle management of countless families had also started to stand in line and divide into different factions. Inevitably, the entire family had fallen into internal strife. Just as Harry finished his training, he started to develop his own power and business. The Parker family, on the other hand, started to decay and lose valuable assets. As Harry's strength began to grow, the various industries in which he invested were flourishing. "Harry, I think the family council has more than just marriage plans for Michaela," Nate said seriously. Harry thought seriously for a moment. He nodded slowly. "I understand what you mean. I wonder when they'd come after me. With all I've built, it was only a matter of time before they came to try and take it away." "Yes, you don't know how greedy these people are right now." Nate's tone was solemn. Harry, on the other hand, smiled. "I'm no pushover. I'd like to see them try and take it. That's why you have to take it seriously. Harry, the family council still holds a lot of weight and power." Harry said, "Doesn't matter to me, they stole from my father. I'll make them pay." Regarding this matter, even though Harry had not taken it seriously on the surface all these years. In fact, this had always been a thorn in Harry's heart. Those members of the board of directors took advantage of Harry's parents' death, and not only did they take advantage of him, but they also bullied him because he was still young and insensible, so they exiled him. They secretly divided Harry's father's power, essentially kicking him out of the family. Although with Nate's hard work, he saved Harry tens of billions of dollars. It was scraps compared to the amount of money the other members of the family had stolen. "I'm not sure joining the council will let you get your father's money back," Nate said. Harry smiled. "I never said I wanted to join the council. I don't care about that kind of place at all. But if you don't join the board of directors, you don't have the right to express your opinions. How can you protect your own power?" Nate wanted Harry to find a way to take back his power. "I don't want to run into that quagmire and get myself into trouble," Harry said in disdain. "Then the board is going to arrange a marriage for Michaela. How do you plan to stop it?" Nate was in a difficult position. Harry didn't want to take back his father's position in the family. Although the Parker family's strength had declined a little, they were still one of the top families in the world. The amount of power they had in control was enormous. With Harry's current strength, if he wanted to openly confront the board of directors, he would stand no chance. This was also why Nate wanted to persuade Harry to lower his head to the family council. In Nate's view, the council clearly wanted to arrange a marriage for Michaela. They wanted to use it as a way to get to Harry's property. In Nate's eyes, Michaela was just an illegitimate child. Although she was indeed the biological daughter of Harry's father, an illegitimate child was an illegitimate child. Nate knew that Michaela held no power in the family, so marrying her off wouldn't do anything. The board of directors was nothing to Harry. Now that he had a sister, Harry couldn't let anyone take her away from him. Harry said coldly, "They're just losers and cheaters. I'll never listen to them. We don't have the strength to compete with the board of directors now. I think we can delay it for a while." Harry said firmly, "That's impossible. I've seen what they're capable of. How do you think my parents died?" Nate turned pale with fright. "You know," Harry sneered and said, "I don't know anything, but I'm not a fool. My parents didn't die in the accident." Harry raised his hand and said, "Although it was many years ago, I've been thinking about it ever since I became sensible." "Nate, my parents didn't die in an accident, but were murdered, right?" Harry's words were like a clap of thunder, causing Nate's face to turn pale. Nate knew a little about Harry's parents' death. One reason Nate never told Harry was because he had no concrete evidence. Harry was too young. He couldn't do anything even if he knew. Harry couldn't even protect himself. Now that so many years had passed, there was nothing left to investigate. After all, the overall situation of the family had already been decided. Even if Harry knew that his parents had died because of someone else's scheme, he wouldn't be able to do anything about it. "Nate, I'm not stupid. It's meaningless to hide this from me. Do you have anything you want to say?" Harry looked at Nate, who seemed to want to say something, and asked. Nate said with a bitter expression, "Everyone knows about the death of your parents, but there is no evidence. If you want to take revenge, you need to think about it carefully. Harry sneered and said, I know that. Taking revenge is not something that can be done overnight. Since I have waited for so many years, I don't care about waiting a few more days. Harry's cold blood towards those people from the family council was engraved in his heart. In the past, he didn't have the ability, so Harry could only bury the hatred deep in his heart. No one knew that Harry could hide his hatred so well. Even the steward closest to him didn't know that Harry was constantly thinking about revenge. Harry was different. He knew what kind of people he was facing and how powerful they were. If he didn't have any preparation or plan, he wouldn't be able to face those people. The only thing he could do was to take revenge and be killed instead. Harry had been preparing for his revenge plan for a long time, from the moment he took over his father's inheritance. The revenge plan started silently from Harry's hands until the super factory layout was completed, and the bionic human legion could be produced. Harry now had his own strength, and he also had the confidence to face those people from the board. However, the board wanted to take Harry's properties away from him. Nate, I'll bring you to see some things. You'll know that I'm no longer the same little kid that I was before. Harry stood up and greeted him. Nate had a puzzled expression on his face. He didn't understand what Harry meant, but he still stood up quickly and followed Harry out of the manor. The two of them arrived at Industrial Island. Harry brought Nate into the workshop of the super factory. At this time, the initial operation of the super factory had begun. In the endless workshop, countless artificial arms were neatly arranged. Starting from the source of the raw materials, the mechanical arms were continuously being manufactured on their own. Then, all kinds of parts were assembled, debugged, and formed. He watched as the internal skeleton robots with a metallic luster walked down from the production line one by one, then walked into the preparation warehouse in a neat formation. Such a spectacular scene stunned Nate. I can't believe my eyes! Nate rubbed his eyes and said in disbelief. Nate assumed he was hallucinating. Harry waved his hand and summoned a bionic human that had just walked out of the production line. He said to Nate, This is not an illusion, it's real. Take a closer look. Nate had a shocked expression on his face. He looked at the Terminator-like machine that steadily walked in front of him. First, he took 2 steps back in fear. Nate had seen some pretty outlandish things before. However, seeing that the machine in front of him didn't make any other moves, Nate slowly emboldened himself. He stretched out his hand and touched the metal skeleton. He couldn't help but exclaim, How is this possible? Harry said calmly, It took some of the smartest minds to develop this technology. Is it strong? Nate asked again. Harry said with certainty, Extremely strong. After saying that, he brought Nate to a spacious testing ground. There were all kinds of monitors to measure all aspects of the robot, and under Harry's instructions, the technicians in the testing ground started testing a bionic android. With an instantaneous burst of speed, it ran 100 meters in under 5 seconds. Long-distance endurance, able to maintain a stable running speed of 70 miles per hour. The bionic human could run mountains and cross valleys at this speed. At the strength test, a 5-ton car, the bionic human could easily flip over. In the next test, the android punched a hole straight through a foot of concrete. While the tests were happening, large monitors were looking at the AI that was connected to all the androids. Millions of processes were being considered every second while the android performed the tests. While the network controlled the android at the factory, it could also be disconnected and operate on its own with a similar AI built into its processor. The battery was still the same as the first model and wasn't very efficient. In the near future, Harry planned to use the superconductors he found and use them instead of using the inefficient battery. Small fusion reactors could be installed in their bodies. At that time, they'd only need to replace their fuel every few years. The continuous supply of energy would allow the bionic humans to operate at full strength for longer. After Nate saw Harry's shocking mechanical army, he fell into deep doubt. Harry could take over the board of directors with a small army of the bionic humans. However, after a moment of distraction, Nate regained his senses. Harry seemed to be very powerful now, but compared to the family council, he still had a long way to go. Harry had a clear understanding of the power he had now and the strength of his family. The reason why he brought Nate here today was to let him understand. It wasn't that Harry didn't have the strength, it's because he was waiting for the right time. Furthermore, the strength he possessed now had a chance to overturn the entire world. Therefore, Harry knew in his heart that as long as he stabilized himself and kept a low profile, There would be a day when he would be able to make his move. He would change the flow of the entire Parker family and crush all his enemies under his feet. Nate, now you know how much potential I have here. To be honest, I don't care about what those people of the family council value, Harry said proudly. Science and technology were changing day and night, so once there was a breakthrough, it would quickly gather wealth and resources and become a new power. Harry wanted to rely on the technology he had to change the world. Nate looked at the bionic human that was displaying his powerful destructive power, swallowed, and said, I understand, but you must be careful. Harry smiled and said, I'm being careful. Then regarding the matter of Michaela's marriage, I think it is better to take a step back and talk to those people on the board of directors first, Nate advised. However, Harry's expression turned cold. I've already said that there is no room for negotiation on this matter. No one can take my sister away from me, Nate urgently said. It's just some political thing. Michaela won't really have to marry someone. Besides, once you're ready to take over the family, you can always bring her back and revoke the marriage. To Nate, this was the most rational way. However, to Harry, it was unacceptable. He would never sacrifice his sister just to give him more time to plan his revenge. Harry wouldn't agree to it. His sister was the most important thing in the world for him. You don't need to persuade me anymore. Michaela is going nowhere. Harry refused flatly. Then what am I supposed to say to the council? Nate said worriedly. Harry sneered and said, It doesn't matter. At most, I'll tell them myself. Nate was shocked. No way. If you go now, there's no guarantee that I can keep you safe. I don't believe that they would dare to openly attack me on my family land. Harry actually didn't have many feelings for the Parker family. All he had was a hatred that he couldn't forget. Since the family wants Michaela to go to the council, I'll take Michaela there. But if anyone wants to keep my sister there and wants to marry her off to some loser, then there will be consequences, Harry said with a ferocious expression. Nate wanted to try and dissuade him again, but he didn't know where to start. At night, when Harry returned to the manor, he called Michaela over. You were looking for me? Michaela had been fighting with Celeste and the others recently, even though she didn't pay attention to entertainment celebrities in the past. However, Michaela was still a girl after all. She was always very envious of those multi-talented girls. She often went into the Star Moon Entertainment building. She learned to sing and dance with a group of female artists and so on. When Harry saw that his sister had found something interesting, he also happily helped her fulfill her wish. It was a good thing to learn more singing and dancing skills. Michaela, I want to bring you to see the family tomorrow, Harry said. Michaela was very surprised. Why so suddenly? Didn't you say you won't let me go? Harry said, The family knows about you and requested that I bring you to them so they can see you. Oh, then I'll listen to you. When are we leaving? Tomorrow morning we'll take a plane. All right. Michaela didn't take this matter to heart at all. She didn't know how many implications were involved in flying to see her extended family. She just thought that Harry was the one who brought her out for a trip. She only wanted Harry to be by her side. The Parker family was a very distant place in Michaela's heart. The next morning, Harry brought Michaela onto his plane and flew towards the family land of the Parker family. As one of the top families in the world, the Parker family was elusive. Only a few of the upper echelons knew that there was such a powerful and terrifying family with control in all corners of the world. Whether it was resources, finance, or real industries, they controlled it all. However, most of it wasn't run by the Parker family directly. They mostly just had controlling shares in multiple countries. From there, they indirectly controlled their wealth. No one knew about this. The place where Harry and Michaela were heading to was kept a complete secret. The plane flew all the way to the snowy plateau that had been called the edge of the world. There were over 1 million square kilometers of land, and there was no one else for thousands of miles. The environment was inhospitable, but not uninhabitable. In an unknown place surrounded by the World Edge Mountains, there is a vast valley, and in this valley was the family land of the Parker family. Unlike the desolate and cold weather in the mountains outside, the valley was like spring all year round, with lush greenery. The surrounding mountains were like huge city walls guarding the valley. It was basically impossible to enter from the outside. Just the towering snow mountain and the freezing temperature of a few dozen degrees Celsius were enough to scare people from exploring any further. However, there were some amazing places in the world. The valley where the Parker family's land was located was one of them. The high mountains and low valleys created a warm climate near the water, which gave the whole valley a lush environment. The surrounding glaciers had flattened the land in multiple places, making it ideal for development. The abundance of water made this valley very suitable for farming and animal raising. The Parker family started off running from war with many families from their town that had been destroyed and accidentally stumbled upon this valley. They had settled here hundreds of years ago. This place was like a paradise, far away from the disturbances and grudges of the outside world. The ancestors of the Parkers lived and multiplied in this place. Until the population of the entire family became larger, there was no longer room for more people to live here at the bottom of the valley. It was only because of this that the Parker family had no choice but to send a portion of their family members out to try and find a place to live and a way to survive. What was unexpected was that the valley had a lot of valuable resources that the Parker family had been accumulating the entire time. The family members that had left the valley had used their connections to sell the valuables from the valley to build their wealth even further. They had nearly doubled the amount of money they had in the first few months. After that, they built their wealth further, investing in new technologies and properties. The family that left the valley never relied on the valley for long. Soon they began to build their own foundations, and soon were making enough money to expand. Luckily enough, over the generations, some of the Parker family would be born with some unbelievable abilities. Some were stronger than normal, others were smarter than normal, and others had above-average traits. These people were raised to lead their families to even greater heights than their previous generation. Finally, the change in quantity brought about a qualitative change. The Parker family had become a huge, widespread family that had investments all over the globe. The entire family stood at the top of the world. Now the Parker family had begun rotting from the inside out. Originally, it should have been better. After all, the family council was managed by the direct descendants of several families, and it should have been a peaceful transfer of power. The members of the board all had their own plans and always wanted to gain more benefits for themselves. This inevitably resulted in all sorts of schemes and power struggles. The power was divided, and the orders issued by the family's central command were slowed down. Sometimes orders would be given from conflicting groups and cause more damage than doing nothing at all. Without the central command, the orders of the family's subordinates were also delayed. The various industries could still operate automatically under their independent management system. However, with all kinds of absurd orders given by the board, the direct consequence would be that all the industries would be affected. From the current situation, the impact wasn't strong enough to cause irreparable damage. Sooner or later, the entire Parker family would lose everything they had built over the generations. Looking down from the sky, Michaela felt a little strange. It was hard to imagine how the Parker family could live here. This was an uninhabited region, a place that was unsuitable for humans to live in, except for some geologists who occasionally came here to inspect the landscape, or a group of mountain climbers who came here to challenge a certain peak. But when the plane passed through a thick layer of clouds, a touch of green in the mountains was reflected in Michaela's eyes. "There it is," Michaela pointed outside the window and said. Harry smiled and said, "No need to be surprised. That place is where our family's land is located." Michaela was even more surprised. "No way!" She really couldn't think of any words to describe her current feeling. With curiosity towards the unusual environment below, the plane finally landed on a runway in the valley. Michaela, who couldn't wait to get off the plane. Although this place was far from the prosperous land she had envisioned, it wasn't as desolate and backward as she imagined. The first thing she saw when she walked out of the cabin door was a modern airport. Moreover, the area of this airport wasn't small, apart from the fact that Harry's plane had just landed. There were all kinds of airplanes parked on the landing pad far away from the airport. There were no less than 100 of them in total. On the distant horizon, under the mountains, there was a grand palace. Red high walls, purple glazed tiles, under the conical shape of a crown at the top of the mountains, it glittered brightly. The vast palace that stood between the mountains was so spectacular that Michaela was lost in thought and couldn't say a word for a long time. Harry saw his sister's face and knew that she was shocked. Every person who saw the family land of the Parker family for the first time would be like this. After all, the Parker family was the top family in the world, and they occupied most of the wealth in the world. With such a large amount of wealth, coupled with the hundreds of years of management, this palace complex was incomparably magnificent. Although the Parker family didn't rule a country like a royal family, The hidden strength of the Parker family was even greater than any other royal family. Such a powerful ruler that nobody knew about. It was no longer something that the royal family of a country could compare with. It's quite spectacular, actually. After looking at it for a long time, I've gotten used to it. There's nothing strange about it. Harry smiled and said to Michaela. For others, especially those who came here for the first time, they would definitely be shocked by the view in front of them. However, for someone like Harry who had grown up in this place and was a direct descendant of the Parker family, everything here was already something that he had seen over 1,000 times. Although it had been 7 or 8 years since he had returned, Harry found that he wasn't very excited to be back. He didn't feel happy at all that he had returned home. After all, this wasn't Harry's home anymore. Since he was expelled by the board using the excuse of training, those people didn't plan to let Harry come back. But today was an exception because Harry had brought his younger sister. "This is where you grew up? This place is incredible," Michaela said. She didn't know about the complicated feelings in Harry's heart. However, after that, Michaela looked around in puzzlement and asked, "Why isn't there anyone here to welcome us?" Michaela knew that her brother was the true heir of the Parker family. Although she was Harry's younger sister, she was still an illegitimate child after all. There was still a gap between her and Harry's status. However, what made Michaela puzzled was that when an heir like Harry returned to the family, the entire airport was deserted. Although Harry usually didn't like to make a big deal of things, the heir of the family had returned. Someone had to greet him. However, today was very strange. After Harry's plane stopped, other than the people Harry brought, no one else could be seen around the runway. Harry said with a faint smile, "It's true that I'm an heir, but there are a lot of people here that want me dead." Michaela was shocked by Harry's words. She wasn't a fool. Through the current situation and Harry's words, she could understand what was going on. Suddenly, she understood. No wonder Harry didn't mention anything about returning to the family ever since he found her. Furthermore, Harry was staying in the manor in Florida. He had never come into contact with anyone from his family in many years. Michaela felt that the way she'd been treated by her family wasn't too different from the way Harry was treated by his family. Although Harry came from a noble family, the difference between him and Michaela was that he didn't suffer much when he was young. However, the fate between the two of them was extremely similar. When he was young, Harry was kicked out of the family before he came of age. When Harry grew up, he opened up his own business and started building his own wealth. Those who chased Harry out became jealous again. They tried to find an opportunity and an excuse to take away Harry's business, which had unlimited potential. "Is it dangerous for us to come here? If that's the case, what's the point of coming here? Why don't we go back now?" Michaela felt that it would have been better to stay home. Harry had brought less than 100 men with him. If he really encountered danger, he would be restricted in other people's territory. Harry shook his head and comforted, "Don't worry, I know what to do. They won't hurt us here." Before Harry came, of course, he had considered everything. Although the actions of those members of the family council had become more and more outrageous over the past few years, Harry was still relatively untouchable. It wasn't the time for them to attack. In order to maintain the stability and unity of the family on the surface, no matter how much the board wanted to kill Harry, they wouldn't kill him today. Harry had come this time to make his intentions clear. However, he had some authority in the family. The board of directors could manage the family, but they couldn't afford to order Harry around. Although Harry didn't care about being an heir, he had never felt that the wealth of the family was important. However, Harry had never said that he would give up, so the board of directors couldn't take it away on their own. Furthermore, they had made plans to marry Michaela off against her will. By this, they had crossed a line. Harry couldn't just sit and watch when his family was disrespected. It was necessary for him to come to the family today. If Harry didn't come, it'd be equivalent to agreeing to their demands. It wasn't Harry's style to swallow his anger. He looked at the palace building in the distance. Harry said with a faint smile, "Let's go." The valley was massive, but was only lightly occupied by the Parker family. Although there was a huge group of buildings in the valley, which could accommodate hundreds of thousands of people, there weren't even 10,000 people living in the family land. There were 6,000 guards and 3,000 house help. There were less than 1,000 members of the Parker family living in the valley. The reason was that the Parker family no longer lived mainly in the valley. Most of them were scattered all over the world. They would only gather here for a major family event, and even then, they were never all gathered in one place. Although there weren't many people here, it was still the control center of the Parker family. The family council was in charge of the family, controlling every member of the Parker family. The walls of the buildings were lively with color, but with little to no members from the family living there, the streets looked somber. Only a few decades ago were the streets full of people and every house was full. Back then, hundreds of thousands of people lived in the valley. It was relatively peaceful. There were some minor issues that would arise but would be resolved quickly. However, the family land of Parkers had gradually become less prosperous under the control of the family council. Everything has its pros and cons. Moving out of the valley made living in the valley harder, but moving to every corner of the world let the Parker family expand much more quicker. However, the most fatal flaw was that when the family members were separated, the feelings between the family members had also become fainter. Slowly, they began to care about their own interests and no longer wanted to share it with the other family members. Harry could guarantee that if the council disbanded now, then the entire Parker family would be dismembered in one night. It would become hundreds or even thousands of separate families. After growing up for so long, the Parker family that stood at the top of the world would eventually be divided. Harry, who was sitting in the car, looked at the familiar yet strange scenery outside the window and fell into deep thought. After leaving the airport and heading toward the palace, the whole place was silent. Other than Harry's motorcade, he couldn't see anyone else on the streets. After the initial novelty, Michaela also lost interest. But today, they were going to face the family council and bargain with those people to let Michaela choose her own path in life. But the family council's strength was enormous. Harry was nervous to stand in front of them, even if he never showed it on his face. "No one is going to come to welcome you home?" Michaela asked. Harry smiled indifferently. "I expected this. Besides, if they did send someone, I know they'd just be putting on a facade, and I hate dealing with two-faced people." "Then, what if the council doesn't change their mind and insist on marrying me off?" Michaela was worried. Harry had already informed Michaela about her marriage issue and she was scared about it. The family council was thinking of doing what her old family had almost succeeded in doing. Luckily, Harry had come to save her and take her away from that old life. Now she was back to square one, but this time she wasn't certain she could get out of this arrangement. Michaela sighed for her own fate. Harry saw her disappointed look. He smiled and comforted her. "Don't worry. Without my permission, no one can tell you to do anything." "I understand, but if it comes down to it, I'll accept whatever they say. I don't want them to come after you just because I don't want to get married," Michaela said. Harry shook his head. "Silly girl, what are you talking about?" "But I heard Nate say that if we don't accept, they're going to destroy everything you've built. I can't let that happen," Michaela said worriedly. Harry touched the back of Michaela's head and smiled. "Don't worry, you have to believe me. I can handle the council." Harry had already inquired about who they wanted to marry Michaela off to before they came. He was a prince from an oil family in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia wasn't a big country, but it wasn't small either. The economy of the entire country was very strong, and the armed forces were also very impressive. More importantly, Saudi Arabia has a monarchy as their form of government. It was a powerful country. In recent years, rare minerals and large oil deposits have been discovered, mined, and sold. Having such large quantities made the country very wealthy monetarily and politically. The royal family gained a lot of support and admiration for making their country so prosperous. Therefore, the royal family of Saudi Arabia wanted to get closer to the Parker family so they could grow and make more lucrative deals. By relying on the Parker family, they could maintain the foundation of their country's rule. As for the Parker family's council, they also hoped to take this opportunity to extend their influence into Saudi Arabia. Development had been slow. The Parker family had set up a lot of mines and oil fields, but were forbidden from expanding production. The royal family prevented this and had caused tension in their other dealings as well. The council saw marriage as the only solution to improve relations between the two families. The council had been in talks to arrange for a marriage to the royal family's prince. The Parker family had no suitable match until Michaela was found. Before they knew about Michaela, the Parker family had tried to arrange for some of the farther ends of the family tree, trying to find a suitable match. However, the royal family didn't want to marry their prince off to some distant cousin that wasn't worth anything to the Parker family. Therefore, the clear requirement was to marry a daughter from a direct heir of a family. Just as the members of the family council were discussing this matter, the spy who was assigned to watch Harry coincidentally reported an important piece of news. Harry had left Florida for a few months, but he actually brought back a little sister. When the family council first heard this news, they thought that the spy was drunk and was only sending news to get paid. The Parker family had clear control of the members of their family. They had records that detailed who was who in every family. As for Harry's bloodline, it was even clearer. As the only son of his family, he was orphaned when his parents passed away. Harry was already in his 20s, but the council had never heard of Harry having a sister. Harry's parents only had one child. His father wasn't always faithful to his marriage, but there had never been an incident that the family didn't know about. Thus, when the council heard of this news, their first reaction was to fire the spy and hire another to verify the report. However, what surprised the council was that they had misjudged the former spy this time. Michaela was the illegitimate daughter of Harry's father. Harry's father didn't know that he had accidentally got Michaela's mother pregnant. He didn't report it to the family. Then, of course, the family council didn't know that Michaela was born. The spy had confirmed that Michaela and Harry were indeed related. The results proved that Michaela was an illegitimate child. The family council had decided that it was fate, and they should immediately bring Michaela home to get her prepared for the arranged marriage. What made the council even more overjoyed was that Michaela is Harry's half-sister. They hated that Harry was alive. The council had tried to kill him and his parents to keep him from inheriting control of the family. However, what worried the family council was that they assumed Harry would be nothing to worry about. Unfortunately for them, Harry had been able to build himself up quite a bit. Relying on the constant reports from the spies, the council was surprised to find that Harry had created a huge industry and had grown a name for himself. They also were trying to get their hands on all of the technology that Harry had been secretly developing. If Harry was allowed to continue developing like this, one day, the family council wouldn't be able to control him. What Harry had now was an industry that could overturn the power dynamic in the world. This made the family council worried. What they feared the most was that Harry would come back to settle old scores with them after he had the means to do so. The family council wanted to make a move on him, but they didn't have a good enough reason. But it was different now. Because of the marriage alliance with Saudi Arabia, the family council finally had an excuse to do something to Harry. Arranging a marriage for Michaela was just a pretense, killing two birds with one stone. They'd get more mining rights, and they could take Harry down a peg or two. The members of the family council were aware that Harry attached great importance to his little sister. He wouldn't listen to the council about the marriage. However, if Harry wanted to oppose their decision, it would be going against the family council. It would give them an excuse to attack Harry. The family council thought they had positioned themselves perfectly. The royal family wanted to obtain the protection of the Parker family, and they had the means to do that. Harry was a problem, and if they could get him to act first, they would be able to kill him. Some of the members didn't like the idea of sending Michaela off to the Saudi prince, but they needed to expand their oil fields. The council knew that the prince was not the nicest man in the world, but they didn't care. The prince had been married a few times before, but divorced his wives for the simplest reasons. The council figured that if they could cement a contract for multiple years, it wouldn't matter if the prince divorced Michaela shortly after their marriage. The royal family of Saudi Arabia wouldn't treat Michaela as a person either. She'd lose her own agency and wouldn't be able to attend university. Michaela was already afraid to be in the valley. If Harry told her the truth, she wouldn't be able to sleep well. Harry came to the valley knowing full well that he was going to have a falling out with the family. He figured that it was better to just rip off the Band-Aid and get over it. Harry's motorcade drove from the airport all the way through a small town. This town was a small city that provided all kinds of supplies to the Parker family. Most of the people living here were the guards and maids of the Parker family. Upon entering, they saw that the town was desolate, because most of the people from the Parker family had left and settled in the outside world. As a result, most of the servants living in this town had left, leaving less than a tenth of the original people in the town. In the once bustling and lively small city, the crowded streets had long disappeared. Passing through the town, Harry was thinking that perhaps this was a sign of the decline of the Parker family. The family land symbolized unity, but now the hearts of the people were separated. Less than 1 out of 10 people lived here. Of course, the Parker family was still a powerful superfamily, and it wouldn't fall in an instant. Ever since the council took control, the family has become less and less prosperous, Nate said. As Harry's old housekeeper was also a part of the Parker family, he would suffer both honor and loss. Nate could see the changes in his family more clearly than anyone else. He also felt incomparably anxious because of this, but he was just a butler and Harry's butler. Nate was powerless to support the entire family. He could only watch anxiously in his heart. However, even Harry couldn't do anything about it. Although he was the heir to the family, at the same time, Harry had also lost his family's power. It was impossible for Harry to make any changes to the family. In fact, many members of the family have realized the potential danger, but with the current situation, no one can change it. Nate sighed. The council knew about the problems inside the family. They didn't hold enough power to affect any kind of change without getting a majority vote from all the leaders. However, because of the various conflicts of interests, they were stuck in a quagmire. They couldn't even protect themselves, let alone do anything for the family. Harry heard Nate's complaints and said with a cold smile, "What's there to change? The Parker family has long been rotten to the core. No matter how much they try to build branches, they won't be able to change. I intend to pull them up by their roots." These words were really ruthless. Even Michaela was stunned when she heard it. "Are you going to watch the entire family fall?" Harry said indifferently. "They've wanted me dead from the beginning as far as I'm concerned. They're no family of mine." "This is your home. Can you really abandon it?" Nate asked. Harry shook his head slightly. "I've made my home. I don't need this place to feel like home." Nate was stunned for a moment. Then he sighed. The convoy passed through the town and continued forward for a long while before they finally arrived near the palace. At this time, when Michaela came closer, she discovered that this palace was too grand. The palace walls seemed to have no end, and they were tens of meters tall. Moreover, they gave off an extremely heavy feeling. Looking at the various carvings on the wall, they depict the detailed history of the Parker family. And within the palace walls, from the foot of the mountain to the mountainside, it was filled with dazzling and resplendent buildings, with all kinds of heavy eaves and arching trees. Michaela got out of the car and said, "Why are the walls so tall?" Michaela didn't understand. The palace was in the most remote place on Earth. Thousands of miles of land were uninhabited. This valley was the only place where there were people. Moreover, the people living here were all people of the Parker family. It was impossible for them to be attacked on a large scale. Harry explained, "This is not to guard against anything. After all, the Parker family has been in this place for hundreds of years. They've never been threatened by any external forces." "Then why?" "One of the former leaders decades ago wanted to make a name for himself and to send a statement," Harry said with a smile. "Oh, so it was just for show." Michaela was instantly stunned. She didn't know who they would be showing off to, because no one was able to get into the valley without permission from the Parker family. The only time outsiders were welcomed was when the former leader was alive and he hosted events and parties in the valley. Even then, the outsiders were never allowed to get close to the palace unless in extremely rare circumstances. In the beginning, the original founders only built a simple and crude town here. However, because of the unique geographical location and superior natural environment, the Parker family gradually grew until they wanted to build more impressive buildings. The Parker family had opened up trade routes after a few generations in the valley. It wasn't until they started to rise in the world that the Parker family started building the palace. After a dozen generations of people, the scale of the palace gradually became larger and larger. Until today, it had become an unknown wonder of the world. Only a few outsiders who were qualified to enter the Parker's family land were lucky enough to see the palace. There were more than 100 entrances of different sizes, but when Harry came here, there was only one entrance that he needed to enter, and that was the main entrance that faced the south. This palace gate was 30 meters tall, and the two sides of the gate were made of brass. It was half a meter thick and couldn't be pushed open by human strength alone. The gate was operated by hydraulics. Harry brought Michaela and walked on the wide and flat white marble paved road. Seeing the hundreds of tall stone statues on both sides, Michaela asked curiously, "These stone statues are so lifelike. Each one of them has a different appearance?" Harry said, "Those are members who have made great contributions to the family in the past few hundred years." Michaela thought for a moment and asked, "Then, is there a statue of our father?" Harry's mouth twitched. He couldn't even stand up in the inner circle of the family. Michaela looked at Harry's expression and knew that she had asked a very stupid question. She fell silent and didn't speak anymore. There were already people waiting in front of the door. They'd extend this courtesy, but not any more than that. Now that Harry had already walked to the front of the palace gate, they had to be slightly respectful. Besides the normal guards who were on duty, the ones waiting at the door were also the stewards of the family council. When they saw Harry walk over, they all bowed respectfully to him. "Mr. Harry, welcome back. The elders of the family council have been waiting for you for a long time," Harry said expressionlessly. "Really? I thought I wasn't welcome." A few stewards forced a smile and said, "You must be joking. Of course you're welcome here." "Ha," Harry said. He smiled faintly. Nate said, "Mr. and Miss Parker have come a long way and are very tired. You should go to the council to meet the old masters and wait for them to be fully rested." Normally the stewards were servants. Now that Harry was here, no matter what it was, they had to let him rest first. However, the stewards stood up. Their eyelids drooped as they looked at the ground and said, "We've been instructed that Mr. Harry must go to the council as soon as he arrives." "Oh, I must go," Harry said coldly. The members of the council were getting impatient. It seemed like they wanted to solve Michaela's problem as soon as possible. Harry didn't care anymore. Anyway, he couldn't stay here any longer. It was better to finish his business earlier and leave as soon as possible. "All right, then lead the way for me," Harry instructed. "Yes, please follow me." Nate was so angry that he wanted to step forward and argue with these people. However, Harry raised his hand to stop him and said with a smile, "Nate, don't be impatient." "Sorry, I lost my composure," Nate said in a low voice. After entering the palace gates, it was like they had entered another world. Michaela had lost her sense of direction as she walked along the path in the palace. However, they didn't walk. After all, it was unrealistic to walk in such a vast palace. They were ushered into special vehicles that never left the palace grounds. After a while, they finally arrived in front of a magnificent hall. This hall used to be the meeting hall of the Parker family, but it had now become reserved for the family council. There were a total of 199 steps on the stairs, making the already tall hall even more imposing. Walking on the steps, one would feel an extremely strong sense of oppression from the hall above them. This was the first time Michaela had come here. At this moment, she felt a little suffocated. As she walked, she felt as if she couldn't breathe. "It's fine. They just use the stairs to intimidate people," Harry teased her. Michaela took a few deep breaths and said, "Okay." After hearing this, Michaela felt better than before. She followed Harry and the two continued to walk up. When they finished walking up the long flight of stairs, Michaela looked back and felt refreshed. Because of Harry's comforting words, the tension in Michaela's heart had mostly disappeared. The reason why the family council chose this hall was mainly because the entire building had been carefully designed. It had a deep application in psychology. The tall buildings and steep steps made people feel nervous walking on them, and the shadow cast by the entire hall intensified this feeling. The various copper condor beasts standing in front of the hall had ferocious expressions. At first glance, they didn't feel anything, but there was something strange about them. Michaela had unknowingly fallen for the psychological tricks. As someone who had grown up here, Harry naturally knew that there was something fishy about this place. Harry wasn't affected at all. Fortunately, Michaela wasn't the kind of person who was mentally weak. After Harry's explanation, she also understood the reason behind the design. She was no longer affected, and her nervousness immediately disappeared. Harry stood at the entrance of the hall and paused for a moment. Then he walked in with Michaela. Nate followed behind, and behind him were Harry's guards. However, after Nate entered the hall, the guards were about to follow but were stopped by the people at the entrance. "This is a restricted area. No irrelevant personnel are allowed to enter," the guard at the door said with an expressionless face. Harry had brought along a small team from the Wolf Guard. They didn't take too kindly to being disrespected. In an instant, these guards couldn't stand it anymore, not to mention they had to protect Harry as well. "Who do you think is irrelevant? Do you dare to say it again?" Wolfguard shouted. Each of them had bulging muscles all over their bodies. Their eyes were filled with killing intent as they looked at the guards at the entrance of the hall. A few of the guards felt their hearts beating when they saw the glare of the Wolf Guard. These people from the Wolf Guard were true killing geniuses. As for the guards here, No matter how elite they couldn't compare to the number of combat scenarios that the Wolf Guard had experienced. Immediately, they felt guilty and didn't dare to look at the Wolf Guard directly. However, even though they were afraid, they didn't forget their orders. Apart from Harry and his butler, no one else was allowed to enter, especially Harry's bodyguards. Originally, the members of the family council were worried about Harry. They must have made sufficient preparations to summon him today. Immediately, as if an alarm had been triggered, a large group of palace guards rushed out from the hidden corners of the hall. It was as if they had been lying in ambush here for a long time, guarding against Harry. In fact, it was the same. The members of the family council were worried about Harry. If they didn't have the strength to defend the place, they wouldn't have invited Harry. These people knew very well that Harry's parents' accidental death more than 10 years ago looked like an accident. In fact, people with discerning eyes knew that it was the family council who had them killed. So until today, the people of the council wouldn't naively think that Harry didn't know anything. Hearing the commotion, the corners of Harry's mouth curled up into a smile as if he had expected this. Then, he turned around and returned outside. Sure enough, a large number of palace guards were confronting the Wolf Guard nervously. Compared to the nervous faces of these palace guards, the people of the Wolf Guard looked lazy. The Wolf Guard was at a disadvantage in terms of numbers. They didn't have a home ground advantage here. However, the Wolf Guard had such strong confidence. Looking at the well-equipped palace guards, they weren't afraid at all. "They're stopping us from going in." The Wolf Guard saw Harry coming out to report. Harry nodded. "I understand. You guys just wait outside." Wolfguard's expression became serious. "But you don't have anyone to protect you. What if they go against their word?" "How dare you, a mere guard, speak so arrogantly? This is the safest place in the world. What danger can Mr. Harry face?" One of the stewards reprimanded him. "You don't need to treat my men like this," Harry said in a flat tone. "Mr. Harry, I'm doing this for your own good. Your men are too unruly. This is where the family council is located. Your men must not cause any trouble. Otherwise, we're going to have a problem." The man was clearly trying to persuade Harry, but he was secretly threatening him. Harry sneered and said, "You don't need to worry about that. My people naturally know when to advance and when to retreat, but your guards are a bit too weak. If you are too nervous, you have to be careful of getting caught in the crossfire. My subordinates are all hot-tempered." Harry also threatened them both in the open and in the dark. Only then did he say to the Wolf Guard, "Wait for me here." "Yes, sir." Although the people of Wolfguard were worried, they could only obey Harry's orders. Once again, they returned to the main hall. After passing through a few doors, they entered a large hall. This was the place where the people of the family council usually worked. The hall was very spacious. Just the opening room alone was more than 100 meters wide, and the depth was more than 50 meters. At the very front of the hall, there was a tall platform. There were a total of 4 seats on it. On both sides of the hall was a lower platform. The 4 seats at the front were the 4 directors of the family council. The seats on both sides were for the members of the council who were second in rank. Although there were many of them, they were all controlled by the direct members of the Parker family. However, in the family council, the authority was still in the hands of the 4 directors. At this moment, the seats on both sides were empty. There were only 4 council members. "Harry, how long has it been since you came back to the family? You passed the trials. Why didn't you come back to report?" A council member who looked kind spoke up. Harry didn't answer. Instead, he took a few steps forward and looked around. At this moment, he was standing in the middle of the hall. The 4 council members were sitting high above as they asked questions. They didn't even give Harry a chair. These counselors were too lazy to be courteous now. Harry didn't want to waste any more time with these people. He went straight to the point. "Let's cut the crap. I'm here today because of my sister." "How dare you?" A council member with a serious expression scolded loudly. A deep voice resounded in the empty hall. Michaela wasn't prepared and immediately shivered in fear. "We aren't only the family council but also your family. This is how you speak to your elders." The serious person reprimanded him again. In fact, these 4 directors had a very deep blood relationship with Harry. They were all brothers of Harry's father, and they were also heirs of the Parker family. However, ever since the previous leader of the Parker family, who was also Harry's grandfather, passed away, he specified that none of his children could hold the lead position of the family. Therefore, an internal fight for the position of leader had started in the Parker family. In fact, Harry's father didn't have any intention of fighting for the position of leader, but his men didn't want him to give up just like that. Thus, he tried his best to persuade Harry's father to join in the fight. Harry's father wasn't willing, so he left the valley and went outside to have a good time. At this time, he met Michaela's mother. As for Harry's uncles, they began to fight over power. After going through a long period of internal strife, they could only compromise with each other. Since no one could snatch the position of leader, they could only take a step back and set up the family council to jointly take charge of the family's power. Harry's father saw that the dust had settled and thought that everything would be fine in the future. He returned to the family, but he was too naive. Among the brothers, Harry's father was actually the weakest one. The other four reached a compromise after the fight and formed a council. According to common sense, Harry's father should also have a position. However, the other four people rejected him and privately coordinated an accident to happen to Harry's parents. After Harry's parents died, the four counselors divided the wealth that belonged to Harry and mercilessly expelled him from the family. Now, Harry had returned, but these uncles didn't care about him at all. Instead, after learning about the businesses that Harry had set up, they became deeply afraid of Harry. Now, they were going to conspire again, preparing to snatch the properties that Harry had built himself over time. I let you go out to learn because I wanted you to grow and be a better person. What have you learned? You don't even have some basic manners? Another gloomy-looking director said. Harry had a mocking expression. I've been living on the streets for the past few years. I have been living with beggars and gangsters. What do you think I can learn? The counselors didn't expect Harry to reply in such a manner, and their voices immediately became stifled. Harry held his hands behind his back and said in a neutral tone, "Counselors, let's get straight to the point. You called me over and let's say that it was for my sister to enter the family. I have no objections regarding this matter, but I'll not agree to the arranged marriage." Harry didn't want to be kind to these people, so he went straight to the point. The four counselors didn't expect Harry to be so direct, not even giving them any leeway. He immediately patted the armrest of the chair and said, "Ridiculous, you, a junior, have the final say in matters of the family. Your parents are no longer here. The marriage will be decided by us." Harry sneered, "What year is it? No wonder the family is getting weaker and weaker in your hands." "Harry, watch your tone. This is the family council. We're not here to argue with you." "This is me being nice to you," Harry said rudely. The serious face of the council members looked like they were about to explode from anger because of Harry. Facing the furious roars of these council members, Harry's face remained calm. Harry said seriously, "I didn't come here to follow your orders. Michaela is my younger sister. You can't decide her future and neither can I. She gets to decide for herself. She is a member of the Parker family. She should contribute to the Parker family. Otherwise, she won't be able to join the family." "Who is more her family, you four morons that didn't even know she existed, or her own brother?" "The marriage has already been decided. You have to agree even if you don't want to." The few directors had also lost their patience with Harry. They pushed the matter to a point where there was no room for negotiation. Harry smiled and said, "Oh, then it seems that you guys are going to take me down?" "It's not that I'm going to take you down, but that you must follow the council's decision. Going against the council's decision is going against the entire family. You have to understand the current situation. The family council is in charge of the family now. Do you still want to go against the orders and leave the family to be independent?" The directors threatened Harry. Harry didn't fall for their tricks at all. He had been disappointed with this family for a long time. Just as Harry was about to speak, Michaela, who had been silent all this while, spoke first. "I agree." Harry's face was filled with shock and disbelief. "What did you say?" Michaela said solemnly. "I'll agree to the marriage. You can't fight with the family." Harry said angrily, "What do you know? If you don't understand the situation, why did you agree?" The few directors didn't expect Michaela to speak. They were surprised. Michaela finally understood that the family council had no intention of letting Harry go. They had previously stolen their father's family property. Now that they saw Harry had the potential to grow, they were afraid that Harry would take revenge on them. Therefore, they began to use all kinds of schemes and plots. Marriage to Michaela was the first step to anger Harry. Currently, Harry's strength had yet to fully develop, and he couldn't go against the family council yet. Therefore, they wanted to use the opportunity to marry Michaela to test where Harry's bottom line was. If Harry obeyed, they would know that Harry still didn't dare to fall out with the family council, and that would cause more trouble for Harry. If Harry flew into a rage because of Michaela, it'd be exactly what the family council wanted. They were trying to find an excuse to attack Harry. The council couldn't fight Harry for no reason. He was an heir. The family would kick them out if they went against a rightful heir. It was inevitable that the other members of the family would be wary of the family council. Therefore, after Michaela thought about it for a while, she felt that she couldn't become an obstacle to Harry. Therefore, she made the decision to agree with the council's decision. Harry was so angry that his stomach was about to explode. He didn't think that Michaela wouldn't consider the consequences. "Michaela, don't mess around. This marriage is not a good thing for you," Harry said urgently. Michaela said softly, "I understand, but I'm making things difficult for me. It's just marrying a stranger. At most, I'll just wait. You can just bring me back in the future." In Michaela's opinion, marriage wasn't something that could cost her life. Since the council was so aggressive, they could pretend to agree and let the council have no excuse to attack Harry. When Harry grew stronger in the future, he could just find her and bring her back. Michaela felt that compared to Harry's career, her happiness wasn't more important, and she didn't care about herself more than Harry. However, Harry didn't want her to sacrifice her happiness, because this was no longer a small matter. If Michaela was really married to the Prince of Saudi Arabia, she'd be mistreated the whole time. Harry immediately shouted angrily, "Stop messing around! What do you know? Go away! There's no place for you to interrupt." This was the first time Harry had scolded Michaela. Michaela was shocked at first, but then her eyes were filled with tears. Harry said helplessly, "I know you're just trying to help me, but I have my own plan." He persuaded Michaela to back off and stay quiet. Harry turned around and said to the people of the council with a serious expression, "No matter what, I'll not agree to the marriage." After the stern-looking council member heard Harry's decision, he didn't get angry. Instead, he laughed. "Harry, you have left the family for too long. You may not know what's been happening." "Oh, is that so?" Harry said with a sneer. "Do you know what the consequences of going against the decision of the council are?" a council member asked. Harry didn't mind. "I don't know the consequences. I only know that no one can take my sister away from me." All right. Let me tell you. The decision of the council is unquestionable. Anyone who violates it will be punished," Harry said with a resolute face. "I'll take any punishment you will send my way." A few council members said seriously, "Are you really going to be so stubborn?" "Of course!" "Very well. There is no room for negotiation in the council's decision. Since you're not going to comply, then I'll announce your punishment to the family." "Hurry up and say it. I'm hungry." Harry wasn't worried about himself at all. Nate turned pale with fright and hurriedly advised, "Counselors, Harry is still young. He's being rash. Don't be angry. Let me talk with him to make him understand." A few counselors had disdainful expressions on their faces. "Nate, you're just Harry's housekeeper. You're not qualified to speak here." Harry raised his hand and said, "Nate, you don't have to persuade me. I've made up my mind." Nate urgently said, "It's too irrational to go against the family council now. We still have room for negotiation." However, Harry really didn't want to do anything to alleviate the situation. The members of the council had already made it clear that they wanted to make a move against him. Therefore, there was nothing they could do to avoid the hostility of the council towards him. "Harry, as the son of the Parker family, you don't want to contribute to the family, but you are determined to go against the family's decision. Now, the council will punish you as follows. First of all, Michaela's identity will not be recognized by the family. Then, the family will take back a portion of the property under your name. As for the exact portion, we will announce it to you after a detailed discussion by the council." After listening to the punishment, Harry immediately raised his head and laughed. Harry laughed so hard that he couldn't catch his breath. "I'm laughing at you guys. You've been waiting for me to do all the hard work so you can make up some stupid rule and pretend you have any authority to enact it. Harry, you don't know what's good for you. We are your elders. Where are your manners? Respect? I would like to ask. You elders are trying so hard to make things difficult for me. Do you still see me as your nephew?" Harry questioned. "I'll warn you, if you don't agree with the family's decision, you won't be able to get any support from the family in the future." Harry looked at him with disdain. "When has the family ever supported me?" The four counselors choked on Harry's words. Harry saw that there was nothing left to say. He turned around and pulled Michaela. "Let's go home." Michaela didn't want Harry to have an issue with the family council now, but since it had already happened, she couldn't say anything else. She could only obediently follow Harry out. Nate glanced at the four men, then sighed slightly and followed behind. In the main hall, as Harry already had a falling out with the council members, it wasn't quite outside anymore. The Wolf Guard was currently standing opposite the palace guards. Both parties had been confronting each other ever since Harry entered the main hall. When Harry walked out, the palace guards restrained themselves slightly. After all, no matter how unwelcomed Harry was, he was still one of the direct successors of the Parker family. However, the Wolf Guard was different. When Harry came out, the palace guards backed away a little. They were excited. One of them stared at the palace guards with his head held high. The disdain in his eyes wasn't concealed at all. They wanted to have a fight with them. However, they were all Harry's subordinates, so they had no choice but to restrain themselves. They could only express their dissatisfaction, and they were so angry that they had all turned red with anger. After Harry walked out of the main hall, he immediately knew what was going on when he saw the men in front of him. He said to the Wolf Guard, "Let's go back home." Harry was used to going about his own business. Today had been a waste. He hated having to come home because his own family had become spineless. The Wolf Guard stood up straight, raising their chin proudly, then followed Harry and prepared to leave. They had been itching to fight, and hearing their new orders made them happier. However, before they could take a few steps, a steward ran over from behind and shouted, "Stop! All of you stop!" Harry turned around and asked unhappily, "What's the matter now?" "Mr. Harry, you and your subordinates can't leave yet," the steward who had caught up to them said coldly. "Why can't I leave now? Don't tell me you dare to keep me here," Harry said with an expressionless face. The steward laughed and said, "I'm not." "Then just say what you want to say. Don't waste my time," Harry said unhappily. The steward had a fake smile on his face, but his words were very rude. "Mr. Harry, your men are thieves. We're missing some valuable items in the palace." "Liar." The steward was speechless. The group of Wolf Guard immediately started cursing. When Harry heard this, he immediately frowned. It wasn't because he felt that his own people would steal something, but because he was surprised by how arrogant this steward was, and how he dared to slander his people in broad daylight. A mere steward dared to go against Harry. There must be a shadow of those people from the family council behind this. Even if it wasn't personally ordered by those people from the family council, they wouldn't be able to escape suspicion. Harry wasn't welcomed by the family council. The people here were all the trusted subordinates of the family council. Just now, Harry had rebuked the family council. These servants were naturally happy to help out their boss. Of course, as servants, they didn't dare to openly go against Harry. "Harry, as an heir, it's not that you don't know. Any of the decorations in the palace is a priceless treasure," the steward said with a fake smile. He paused for a moment and then said, "These men aren't used to this kind of life. They see something expensive and they have to steal it." Harry didn't say anything. The Wolf Guard anxiously said, "Don't listen to his nonsense. We were standing outside the hall waiting for you. When did we steal from here?" "That's right. We were surrounded by those palace guards just now. How could we have the chance to steal from them?" The steward wasn't nervous at all in the face of the Wolf Guard's anger. He said unhurriedly, "This kind of disgrace cannot go unpunished." As soon as he finished speaking, a large group of guards surrounded them once again. This time, they didn't show any courtesy to the Wolf Guard. Each of them had a malicious expression on their faces. The Wolf Guard didn't want to be surrounded. While protecting Harry, even if they were outnumbered, they still dared to confront these guards. Harry waved his hand, signaling the Wolf Guard to be patient. He said, "Relax, there's no need to be too hasty." "Mr. Parker, they're being unreasonable," Wolf Guard said angrily. His men didn't steal anything, and Harry also believed that the Wolf Guard wouldn't do such a thing. However, Harry knew very well that when his plane landed at the airport, this disrespect would happen. The council had sent a large number of people to secretly watch him. As for the palace guards, they were even more wary of him after arriving at the palace. They had been keeping an eye on the Wolf Guard. There were only two possibilities. Either the Wolf Guard's ability to steal something was too strong, or the palace guards were lying. Of course, the Wolf Guard stealing anything from the palace walls was an impossible assumption. Not to mention the fact that the Wolf Guard didn't have the ability to do so. Even the once super thief Wayne wouldn't be able to steal anything from the palace of the Parker family. Furthermore, these palace guards weren't ordinary people. They were the elites that the family had been training since they were young. These guards possessed extraordinary strength and were even more loyal to the family than anything else. Therefore, it was impossible to steal the treasures in the palace under the watchful eyes of these people. However, everyone knew that it was impossible. Yet the family steward continued to lie. Harry stopped the restlessness of the Wolf Guard and asked the steward, Since you said that something is missing, you should at least tell me what it is missing, right? The steward continued to fake a smile and said slowly, there are only a few things. First was an old letter from President Lincoln. The second was the inkwell from President Tyler's desk. The third was an old piece of wood from one of the last ironclads ever built. And fourth was the gold seal from Henry VII. Before you came, they were still standing in the same place, but when you were about to leave, they disappeared. Don't you think it's strange? Harry laughed coldly. This was clearly a false accusation, yet this steward said it so seriously. Harry was so angry that he laughed. These items are worth a lot of money. I don't want to pursue this matter, but he changed the topic and said, these few things are the beloved things of the 4 council members. I don't dare to make an arbitrary decision to let your people take them away, so it's a pity that I still have to find them. Harry sneered and said, just say what you want. Don't be sarcastic in front of me. Oh, don't make things difficult for me. I am just a small manager. It is my duty to guard the palace. Actually, I have no choice but to do so, the steward said complacently.